You think that suffering is part of life. You have been told this for centuries. You have been told that life is a valley of tears, that to be alive means to struggle, to fight, to carry a heavy cross. I tell you, it is all a lie. Suffering is not part of life, it is only part of your conditioning. It is a layer of dust that has settled upon the mirror of your consciousness. Joy is your nature. It is not something you have to find. It is something you are. Pain is your training. You have been trained to be in pain. You have been trained to be miserable. And when you drop the training, when you unlearn this dangerous habit, your nature returns at once. It does not take time. It does not take lifetimes. It happens in a split second. The moment you realize that you are holding onto a burning coal and you simply open your hand, in this communion, in this sharing of silence and words, I will show you how to live without the burden you have carried for so long. You have carried it so long that you have forgotten you are carrying it. It has become like your skin. But it is not your skin, it is a load. I will show you that suffering is not a destiny written in the stars, but only a mistake, a grammatical error in your understanding of existence. And when you see the mistake, really see it, it disappears. Darkness cannot stand before a flame. You will learn how to look at your mind in a new way, not as a master but as a mechanism. You will learn how to stop feeding pain, because pain needs food, it needs energy, and that energy comes from your attention. You will learn how to let joy grow in you like a small flame that becomes a sun. I will take you step by step from confusion to clarity, from heaviness to lightness, from struggle to a simple natural joy. This is not a philosophy. I am not interested in theories. I am interested in your transformation. I am interested in waking you up. I know how easily suffering becomes familiar. You wake up already tired. Have you noticed this? The sun has not even fully risen. The birds are just beginning to sing, and you are already exhausted. Why? Because you carry old wounds as if they belong to you. You drag the corpse of yesterday into the freshness of today. You try to be strong, and the world praises you for it. The world says, look at him, look at her, how well they carry their burden. But inside you feel a slow burning that never stops, a friction, a noise. And because everyone else is also suffering, because your neighbors are suffering, your parents suffered, your teachers suffered, you begin to think this is how life must be. You think it is the rule, but it is not the rule, it is the exception. To be miserable is to be mentally ill. To be joyful is to be sane. If you are feeling this resonance, if you feel that you are ready to drop the burden, do not just listen passively. Participate in this energy field. Press the like button, not for the algorithm, but as a gesture to yourself, a commitment that says, yes, I am ready to drop the weight. And if you have not yet joined this caravan of seekers, subscribe now. We are traveling from darkness to light, and the more of us there are, the easier the journey becomes. So there is a mistake at the very root of how you look at yourself. A small shift in seeing can change your whole experience. And once you see it, you can never go back. Once you have seen that the rope in the dark corner is not a snake, you cannot be afraid of it again. You may still see the rope, but the fear is gone. This talk is not about effort. Please understand this clearly. The moment you make an effort to be happy, you will become miserable. Happiness is not a task. It is not a job. It is not about forcing joy. You cannot force a flower to open. If you force it, you will destroy it. You can only provide the soil, the water, the sun, and wait. It is about returning to the simple nature you were born with, the nature that has been hidden under layers of fear, duty, and habit. You were born as an emperor, and you are living like a beggar. You have the kingdom within you, but you are begging for small coins of pleasure from the outside world. In this journey, I will take you through the real source of suffering, the place where it begins. It does not begin in the market, it does not begin in the office, it does not begin in your relationship. It begins in the invisible machinery of your own head. I will show you why the mind creates pain again and again, even when your life is peaceful, even when you are sitting on a beach, the sun is setting, everything is beautiful. Suddenly the mind will remember an insult from 10 years ago and the peace is shattered. Why does it do this? We will explore this madness. I will show you how joy is not something you must earn. You have been told, work hard and then you will be happy. This is the greatest lie ever told. Happiness is not a reward for work. Happiness is the fragrance of life itself. It is something you uncover. We will look at the tricks of the mind, the lies you were taught, and the simple doorway back to your own inner space. You will discover the one shift that makes suffering fall away on its own. And later I will share a surprising truth about joy that most people never realize even after years of searching. Stay with me, breathe with me, because once this understanding enters you, your whole life can change. When I speak to you about suffering, I don't speak as a philosopher. A philosopher speculates. A philosopher thinks about the mind. I speak as someone who has watched the human mind from the inside, the way a bird watches the sky. I have been inside the storm and I have found the way out. I am simply showing you the exit. And before we move deeper into this journey, I want to bring you into a simple saying. Most people believe suffering comes from life itself, from events, from loss, from uncertainty, from other people. My wife makes me miserable. My job is killing me. The economy is depressing. But this is not true. What I'm about to share may feel strange at first, even a little unsettling, because it asks you to look in a direction you have never looked before. You have always looked outward. You have always pointed the finger at the other. It asks you to turn your attention inward toward the place where the storm begins. It asks you to take responsibility. And responsibility is the beginning of freedom. If you are ready to take this responsibility, if you are ready to stop blaming the world for your state of being, there are ways to deepen this connection. You can join our community here, become a member, and support this work. It is a way of saying, I value this truth. When you click the join button or when you offer a super thanks, it is an energy exchange. It is a flowing of gratitude. And in that gratitude, your heart opens more to receive. Once you see this, once you feel it inside your own experience, a door opens that can never close again. You see, the mind has a strange way of creating its own weather. Life gives you only moments, simple, naked moments. Just this breath, just this sound, just this sensation. Life is very simple, but the mind adds stories. It adds meanings that were never there. It takes a small cloud and turns it into thunder. It takes a look from a stranger and turns it into a judgment. It takes a passing word and turns it into a lifetime wound. And the tragedy is that you believe these storms are real. You are like a person sitting in a cinema crying because the hero is dying. But there is no hero, there is no death, there is only light on a screen. but you have forgotten the screen. You are lost in the movie. You think life is shaking you when in truth it is only your mind repeating the same old patterns again and again, like a broken drum that doesn't know how to stop. It beats the same rhythm of misery, and you dance to it. You have become a puppet to your own memories. What people often miss is this: the mind doesn't just remember pain, it rehearses it. Watch yourself. When you are alone driving your car or washing the dishes, what are you doing? Are you there with the water, with the soap, with the road? No, you are rehearsing. You are having an argument with someone who is not even there. You are defending yourself against an accusation that has not been made. You are polishing your weapons. It goes back into the past, digs up wounds that were already healing, and breathes life into them again. Why does the mind pick the scab? Because the mind exists through conflict. If the wound heals, the mind loses its topic of conversation. A child cries and the cry is finished. Have you watched a child? He falls, he hurts his knee, he cries, it is intense, it is total. But the moment the pain subsides, he is distracted by a butterfly. He laughs. The tears are still on his cheeks, but the laughter is genuine. There is no story, there is no carrying forward of misery. He does not go to his mother and say, I am a victim of gravity, the earth is against me. No, it is finished. But you hold on, you repeat the scene, you replay the words. He said this to me, she looked at me like that. You analyze it, you interpret it, you create a monument out of a moment. You keep the wound open because the mind refuses to let it close. So the pain that life gave you for one moment becomes the pain you choose to carry for 20 years. And then you say life is suffering, life is not suffering. You are a hoarder of pain, you are collecting garbage. And look how the mind resists everything. If something happens that you didn't expect, you call it wrong. You have a script in your head of how the universe should behave. And when the universe, which is vast, infinite, mysterious, does not follow your tiny script, you get angry. It shouldn't be raining today, but it is raining. Your should creates the misery, not the rain. If a person behaves differently than you imagined, you feel hurt. You want people to be characters in your play, but they are not characters, they are alive. They are changing. They are rivers. If life changes direction, you call it unfair. This resistance, this tight grip against what is, becomes a burning inside you. Suffering is not created by life, it is created by your fight with life. It is your refusal to dance with what is already happening. The music has changed, but you are still doing the steps of the previous dance. That makes you clumsy, that makes you stumble. And as long as the mind fights, the body and heart suffer the consequences of a war they never wanted. Your body becomes tense, your stomach creates acid, your heart closes, all because you said no to reality. But perhaps the most important thing to see is this: the moment awareness enters, the storm begins to fade. Awareness is not something you do. It is not a mental activity. It is like opening your eyes in a dark room. The darkness was never real. It was only the absence of seeing. You cannot fight darkness with a sword. You cannot sweep darkness out with a broom. You just bring in a light. The moment you become aware of a thought, you rise above it. You are no longer inside the storm. You are watching it from the sky. And the sky never suffers. The clouds come and go. Black clouds, white clouds, storm clouds. Does the sky care? Does the sky get wet? Does the sky get scarred by lightning? No, the sky remains untouched, open, vast. You are that sky. When you become the sky, your suffering loses its power. It cannot touch you the same way. It cannot drag you into the same depths. Awareness breaks the loop. The drum stops beating, and in that breaking, the first taste of freedom appears. It is a cool breeze. It is a deep breath. So understand this well. Your suffering is not coming from the world. It is coming from the way your mind meets the world. The world is neutral. The event is neutral. You are the projector. You project the color of your mood onto the screen of the world. If you are angry, the whole world looks aggressive. If you are loving, the whole world looks friendly. And if the mind can create storms, it can also learn to let them pass. It does not have to cling. This is only the beginning. Because the mind is not the only reason you suffer. There is something deeper, something older, something woven into your very sense of self. And until you see that layer, joy will always remain just out of reach. Like a bird, you can hear singing in the forest but cannot find, cannot touch. But let us go slowly. Let us peel these layers one by one. I am in no hurry, and you should not be either. Hurry is also a form of violence against yourself. For now, simply see the truth. The mind is the source, not life itself. And when the source becomes clear, transformation becomes possible. There is another layer to your suffering, a layer so old and so familiar that you no longer see it as separate from yourself. You think it is you. And here I want you to move with me gently, because what I'm about to say may feel like a mirror being held up to your life in a way you have never experienced before. It might be shocking, but truth is always shocking to the sleeper. Most people imagine that pain comes to them from outside, from life's difficulties, from relationships, from failures, from disappointments. But this is only the surface. If you look deeper, if you sit quietly, and sitting quietly is the hardest thing for the modern man to do, but if you manage it and listen to the echoes inside you, you will notice something startling. Much of the suffering you carry is not happening to you in this moment. Look at this moment right now. You are listening to me. You are breathing. Is there any suffering right now in this second? No. But your mind is carrying a backpack. It is something you keep alive. It is something you feed, protect, and even identify with, as if without it you would not know who you are. And this is why suffering feels so heavy. It is not merely pain. It is the weight of identity. You are defined by your misery. If I ask you, who are you? You will tell me your story. And your story is mostly a story of struggle. I overcame this. I survived that. I was hurt by him. If you drop the struggle, who are you? You become a vast emptiness. And that emptiness feels like death to the ego. Since childhood, you were taught to endure, to be strong, to survive, to push through. Nobody taught you how to relax. Nobody taught you how to let go. You were praised for your hardness. Big boys don't cry. Be a strong girl. And slowly you began to believe that carrying pain is noble. Society honors the one who struggles, who sacrifices, who keeps a straight face even when their heart is breaking. We give medals to people who suffer beautifully. And you learn to imitate this. You learn to hide your wounds, but never to heal them. You put a bandage on a dirty wound. It looks clean on the outside, but underneath, the infection spreads. You learn to keep walking even when your feet were bleeding. And somewhere along the way, suffering became your companion. a familiar presence. You are never alone. Your misery is with you. You began to wear it like a coat. Even when the sun was shining, you forgot you were wearing it. It is a heavy wool coat in the middle of summer. You are sweating, you are fainting, but you don't take it off because you have forgotten it is a coat. You think it is your skin, you forgot you could take it off. So when I say to you that joy feels unfamiliar, it is simply because you have lived so long in the shadow that sunlight feels like an intrusion, something bright and unsettling, something your eyes are no longer used to. Look at the way people cling to their stories of pain. They repeat them again and again as if polishing a precious jewel. Have you noticed? When people meet, what do they talk about? Their illnesses, their problems, their complaints. It is a competition. If you say, I have a headache, the other says, that is nothing. I have a migraine for 3 days. He is offended that you tried to compete with his small headache. He has a bigger misery. He is the winner. They introduce themselves through their wounds. They seek sympathy, and the world gives it, because the world understands suffering. If you are laughing and dancing in the street, people will think you are drunk or crazy. A policeman might arrest you. But if you are sitting on the sidewalk crying, people will stop. They will be kind. Poor man, what happened? A joyful person is seen as strange, foolish, naive. He doesn't know how hard life is, they say. A joyful person is a problem for society because their freedom reveals the prison everyone else lives in. When you see a free man, it reminds you of your chains, and you don't want to be reminded of your chains, so you condemn the free man. This is why they poisoned Socrates. This is why they crucified Jesus, not because these men were bad, but because they were unbearably happy. Their joy was an insult to the misery of the crowd. This is why society celebrates the strong sufferer but ignores the silent, simple joy. Joy is rebellion. Suffering is obedience. Suffering keeps you inside the structure the world has built. It makes you a good cog in the machine. A miserable person is a good consumer. He buys things to comfort himself. A happy person needs nothing. He is dangerous to the economy. Joy breaks the structure and sets you free. And when you build your identity on pain, when you say, this happened to me, this is how I am, this is my story, a great fear arises. Because if you let go of the pain, who will you be? This is the question that stops you. If you drop the history, what remains? If you stop carrying the heavy bag, what will your hands do? They have been gripping the handle for so long they are cramped. This fear is subtle. Most people never see it. They complain about suffering, but deep inside they fear losing it. They fear the space that freedom brings, because space feels like emptiness, and emptiness feels like death to the ego. The ego would rather suffer and survive than dissolve into joy. If you are beginning to see this mechanism in yourself, if you are beginning to realize that perhaps you have been clinging to your pain, I invite you to go deeper with us. There are books available, my discourses in written form, that can be your daily companions. Check the link in the description. Reading these words is like taking a shower for your soul. It washes away the dust of the day. Imagine a prisoner locked in a cell for 30 years. One day the door opens. The guard says, "You are free. Go. The world outside is vast, unknown." The prisoner hesitates. He steps back into the corner of the cell because the cell is familiar. The walls may be tight, but they are known. He knows the cockroaches. He knows the damp smell. He knows exactly how the light falls at 4 p.m. The sky outside is too open, too frightening, too full of possibility. Where will I sleep? What will I eat? Who will I be? This is how you live with suffering. The door has always been open. I tell you, the door is always open, but the walls became home. You touch your wounds again and again to remind yourself that you exist. I hurt, therefore I am. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I say most of you are living. I suffer, therefore I am. You carry the heavy bag long after forgetting why you picked it up. Maybe you picked it up to protect yourself when you were 5 years old. It was necessary then. But now you are 40, 50, 60. The war is over. Why are you still carrying the ammunition? And yet, you cling to it as if it contains your very life. But I tell you this with great love, real freedom begins the moment you dare to put the bag down. Real freedom begins when you stop calling your pain mine. It is not yours. It is just pain. It is energy. It passed through you. Let it pass. When you see that suffering is not your identity, but only a costume you were forced to wear, something loosens inside you, a knot unties, a small gap appears, a breath you didn't know you were holding is released. And in that breath you feel a trembling, a hint of who you could be without the weight, without the story, without the cage you built around your own heart. This trembling is the beginning of joy. And if suffering is only a habit, only an identity you learn to wear, then what happens when you stop feeding it? What happens when you stop pouring your energy into the old wounds? What rises in the space that pain once occupied? Something surprising begins to appear. Something soft, something alive, something you have not touched since you were a child. Something that has always been there waiting for you to remember. It is not new, it is the oldest thing in you. Let us go to that place. Now I want to take you deeper into a truth that you may have forgotten but have never truly lost. When I say that your suffering is not necessary, I am not offering you a promise of some distant paradise. I am not selling you a future heaven. Religions have done that for too long. Suffer now, enjoy later. I say enjoy now. If you cannot enjoy now, you will never enjoy because tomorrow never comes. I am pointing you back to something already living inside you, something that has been covered but never destroyed. And here is something most people never pause to consider. You were not born with suffering. You learned it. You were trained into it. You were shaped by voices and fears and rules that never belonged to your own being. But before all of that, before the world touched you, before anyone told you who you should be, there was joy, simple, innocent, natural joy, a joy that required no reason, no achievement, no praise. You did not need a bank account to be happy. You did not need a reputation to be happy. You did not need to be a saint to be happy. You were simply there. It was like breath, like the beating of your heart, like the sun rising each morning without effort. Look at a newborn child. Go to a cradle and just watch. No one teaches the child how to smile. No one instructs them in how to be curious, how to laugh, how to look at the world with eyes full of wonder. A fly passes by and the child is ecstatic. A ray of light enters the room and the child is in paradise. Joy flows out of them the way fragrance flows from a flower. It is not something they do, but something they are. You were once that open. You were once that free. Do you remember? Can you close your eyes for a moment and go back? Can you smell the rain of your childhood? Can you feel the grass under your feet before you knew the names of the grass? But slowly as you grew, the stones of conditioning began to pile up. Expectations, don't do this, don't laugh so loud, sit still, be polite, demands. Judgments, fears, they covered the natural spring inside you until one day the water stopped flowing or seemed to, and you began to believe that joy is rare, that joy is something to earn, that joy must be deserved. You began to think, if I get good grades, I will be happy. If I get this job, I will be happy. If I marry this person, I will be happy. You put conditions on your happiness. And the moment you put a condition on happiness, you destroy it. Happiness cannot be conditional. It is either unconditional or it is not there. But that spring has never dried. Understand this, nature does not make mistakes. Your nature is bliss. It is still there, waiting under the stones. The moment you remove even one stone, one small stone of judgment, one small stone of fear, the water begins to move again. What changed you was not life itself. It was the conditioning that entered your mind like dust settling on a mirror. The mirror reflects perfectly, but the dust hides the reflection. You cannot see your face anymore. You think you are the dust. You are not the dust. You are the mirror. Joy did not leave you. You were simply taught to look elsewhere. You were taught to look for approval, to look for success, to look for perfection, to look for meaning outside yourself. And as you searched outward, you moved further away from your own center, the place where joy was quietly waiting. This is why joy seems fleeting to adults but natural to children. Children live close to their center. Adults drift far from it. You are living on the periphery of your own existence. Come back, come home. And joy, remember, does not need a reason. Pain often needs a story. You need to explain why you are miserable. My wife left me. I lost my money. You have a whole file of reasons. But if you are happy and someone asks, why are you happy? You will look like a fool. You will say, I don't know. The sun is shining, or I am just breathing. Joy needs nothing. It is causeless. Joy is a fragrance of being. It arises when you relax into yourself, when you stop pretending, when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to fix what was never broken. Joy is not an achievement. It is a return. It comes when you stop striving and simply allow yourself to be here now without the clouds of the past or the fears of the future. It comes when you stop forcing the river of your life to flow where it does not want to go. Let the river take you, float, don't swim. Swimming is an effort, floating is trust. But if joy is natural, if joy is your very nature, then why do you lose it again and again? Why does it disappear the moment something goes wrong? Why does it feel fragile, like a flame that flickers at the slightest wind? The answer is simple. Something pulls you away from yourself. Something distracts you, disturbs you, shakes you out of your own center, and that something is your identification with the mind. The mind begins to speak, and you forget the silence that holds you. The mind is a chatterbox. It is a machine that never shuts down. It begins to worry, and you forget the trust you were born with. It begins to judge, and you forget the innocence that once guided your eyes. When you identify with the mind, you become a leaf blown by every breeze, Someone insults you and you are angry. Someone praises you and you are proud. You are a slave. You have no center of your own. You are remote controlled by the world. But when you remember yourself, when you rest in your own being, joy rises on its own like a flame that no wind can extinguish. This remembering is the key. This remembering is the path. This remembering is the beginning of freedom. And soon I will show you the doorway into this remembering, the doorway into awareness, the simple, powerful shift that turns suffering into silence and silence into joy. But before we go there, let this truth settle in you. Joy is not far. Joy is your home, and you have only wandered too long in the wrong direction. You are standing with your back to the sun, chasing your own shadow and crying that it is dark. Turn around. Now we move into the heart of transformation, into the space where everything begins to change without effort, without struggle, without force. What I'm about to share with you may sound almost too simple, so simple that your mind will try to dismiss it. The mind loves complexity. The mind loves difficult yoga postures. The mind loves fasting for 40 days. Why? Because the ego loves a challenge. Look at me, I am doing something difficult. But I say to you, God is simple. Truth is simple. The mind always believes that freedom must be complicated, that awakening must be difficult, that joy must be earned. But the truth is the opposite. Suffering is complicated. Have you looked at the structure of your misery? It is a complex architecture. It takes great intelligence to make yourself as miserable as you are. You have to weave so many lies together. Joy is simple. Confusion is heavy. Awareness is light, and awareness is the key. So quiet, so gentle, yet so powerful that the moment it enters your life, the whole architecture of your suffering begins to crumble. Awareness is like waking up from a long dream. As long as the dream is happening, everything inside it feels real. If a tiger is chasing you in a dream, your heart beats fast, you sweat, you are terrified. The tiger looks real. But the moment your eyes open, where is the tiger? Do you need to kill the tiger? Do you need to run away from the tiger? No. You simply wake up and the tiger evaporates. In the same way, suffering cannot survive in the presence of awareness, because suffering exists only when you're asleep inside the mind, lost in thoughts, drowned in memories, dragged by fears. The moment you become aware, just aware, nothing more, the spell breaks. People think awareness requires effort, techniques, discipline. They imagine meditation as a kind of struggle, a practice of forcing the mind to stop. I must stop my thoughts. I must stop my thoughts. This is not meditation. This is just another form of madness. You are fighting with yourself. Who will win? You are both the fighter and the fought. Awareness is not effort. Awareness is a remembering. Awareness is simply turning the light on in a dark room. You don't push the darkness out, you don't chase it, you don't resist it. You only switch on the light and the darkness disappears by itself. In the same way, you don't fight thoughts. Please, never fight a thought. If you fight it, you give it energy. If you fight it, you make it strong. You don't fight emotions. You don't fight your conditioning. You just see it. Aha, anger is here. Aha, sadness is passing. Just witness. Just watch. and the seeing becomes the transformation. When you are unaware, every thought pulls you, every fear shakes you, every worry becomes a storm. You are hit by every passing car on the road of the mind. You are standing in the middle of the highway, blindfolded, but when awareness awakens, something shifts. Suddenly you are not on the road, you are watching the traffic from the sidewalk. The cars still pass. I am not saying the mind stops immediately. The traffic continues. Thoughts still appear, memories still float by, but they cannot touch you. They have no power to drag you in. You are the watcher on the hill. And in this space between you and your thoughts, something beautiful begins to grow. Silence. And from silence, joy rises like a fresh spring. Do you see the beauty of this? You don't have to fix your thoughts. You don't have to clean your past. You don't have to solve your mind. You only have to stop being lost in it. And awareness does that naturally, effortlessly. It gives you distance. It gives you clarity. It gives you the ability to choose where to place your energy. Without awareness, the mind runs your life. With awareness, the mind becomes a servant, not a master. And the mind is a beautiful servant but a terrible master. When this awareness becomes a little deeper, something even more precious awakens in you. A joy that is not touched by life's ups and downs. A joy that does not depend on your circumstances. A joy that does not disappear when the mind becomes noisy or when life becomes difficult. This joy is like the sun behind the clouds. The clouds come and go, but the sun remains. The mind comes and goes, thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, but awareness stays. And where awareness is, joy follows like a shadow. If this message of simple awareness is touching something in you, if you feel the truth of it, help us share this light. Share this video with someone who is suffering, someone who is fighting the darkness with a sword. Send them the light switch. And if you have not yet subscribed, do it now. Be part of this circle of light. So understand, this awakening is not about changing your life. It's about changing your relationship with your mind. It is a shift in perspective. And once this shift happens, even your most ordinary moments become filled with a quiet, steady happiness. Drinking tea becomes a ceremony. Walking on the grass becomes a pilgrimage. This is the beginning of a new way of living, a way where suffering loses its grip and joy becomes your natural breath. And now that you've touched this truth, we can go even further into how this awareness begins to color your daily life, how it brings peace where there was conflict, ease where there was struggle, and a deep sense of freedom where there was once only fear. We are entering a new landscape now, one where joy is no longer a distant dream, but a living presence in your everyday moments. Now that awareness has opened a small window inside you, now that you've begun to sense the quiet space where joy can enter, we must step into one of the deepest truths about human suffering. A truth that hides in plain sight and yet shapes almost every moment of your life. What I'm about to say may feel as if I'm describing your inner world with unsettling accuracy, because it is the reality almost everyone carries without noticing. Most of your suffering doesn't come from life or people or events. It comes from the fight you have with yourself. It comes from the civil war inside your own skin. It comes from the way you judge yourself, reject yourself, pressure yourself, and force yourself into shapes that were never meant for your being. This inner battle is so constant, so familiar, that you've begun to believe it is natural. But nothing could be further from the truth. When you wake up in the morning, before you even step out of bed, the mind begins its commentary. Have you heard it? The inner critic, the inner dictator. It tells you who you should be today. You should be more productive. You should be thinner. You should be kinder. It tells you what you must fix, what you failed at yesterday, what you must accomplish to be worthy. It whispers harsh things, subtle things, small comparisons. Look at your neighbor. He has a better car. Look at your friend. She looks happier. Old criticisms, worries that belong to no real moment. And the tragedy is, you believe them. You take this voice as the voice of God. It is not God, it is just the recording of your parents, your society, your priests. You let them shape your mood, your breath, your whole day. Most of humanity lives in this silent war, fighting with an enemy that doesn't exist, because the enemy is only a voice inside their own mind. And as long as you keep fighting it, joy cannot enter. Joy needs space. Joy needs relaxation. Joy needs you to stop being at war with yourself. You cannot be joyful and a soldier at the same time. The soldier is tense. The joyful man is relaxed. And think for a moment how often you bend yourself to meet the expectations of others. You are like a bonsai tree cut and trimmed to fit into a small pot. How often you try to appear strong even when you feel weak. Tears are coming, but you force a smile. This smile is ugly. It is painted on. How often you force yourself to smile when your heart is trembling. How often you push yourself to match the image the world demands from you. You wear masks upon masks, and you have forgotten your original face. This constant self-editing, this constant pretending, this effort to hold yourself together, it becomes tension in your body. Your neck hurts, your back hurts. Why? It is the weight of the mask. It becomes heaviness in your chest, a quiet ache behind every thought. You don't realize it, but every day you wear a mask so heavy that you forget the face underneath, and the mask becomes another battlefield, another source of suffering. But all suffering rooted in this inner conflict has one simple origin. You have forgotten how to accept yourself. You have forgotten the art of self-love. You have been taught self-condemnation. You have been told you are a sinner. I tell you, you are not a sinner, you are a seed of the divine. You have forgotten how to be at ease with your own nature. You are constantly trying to be someone else. The rose is trying to be a lotus. The lotus is trying to be a rose. Both are miserable. If the rose simply relaxes into being a rose, there is fragrance. You have forgotten that there is nothing to fix, nothing to prove, nothing to hide. You are enough as you are. Existence does not create garbage. Existence has created you with great care. The moment you drop the idea of who you should be, the moment you allow yourself to be as you are, imperfect, human, fragile, beautiful, something miraculous happens. The war stops. Not because you win it. You cannot win a war against yourself. If you win, who loses? You lose. If you lose, you lose. In a war against yourself, you are always the loser. The war stops because you stop participating in it. You drop your weapons. You say, I surrender. I am what I am. And in that dropping, a deep peace enters. And from that peace, joy rises. Not the joy of excitement or achievement, but the joy of simply being at home in yourself. Think of a river flowing through the mountains. It never tries to run backward. It never argues with the rocks. It goes around them. It never wishes to be something else. It simply flows. It trusts gravity. And in that flowing, there is beauty, music, freedom. But you, how often do you try to run backward? How often do you resist the natural movement of your own life? How often do you judge yourself for being exactly who you are? I shouldn't feel this anger, you say, but the anger is there. By saying shouldn't, you create a split. Now you are two, the one who is angry and the one who says anger is bad. Now there is conflict. No wonder you feel tired, no wonder you feel heavy. You are carrying a civil war in your chest. You are wearing shoes that do not fit, walking a path designed by someone else, and then wondering why your feet hurt. Throw away the shoes, walk barefoot on the earth, feel the texture of life. The truth is simple. The moment you accept yourself, the suffering created by inner conflict dissolves. Acceptance is the alchemy. Acceptance transforms the base metal of suffering into the gold of joy. When you allow your nature to be, when you relax into your own rhythm, maybe you are slow, maybe you are fast, it doesn't matter. When you stop comparing your path with another's, a great burden falls away. Comparison is the poison. The moment you compare, you are in hell. She is richer, she is more beautiful, he is more intelligent. Stop it. You are unique. There has never been anyone like you, and there never will be again. Celebration of your uniqueness is religion. You become lighter, softer, more open, and in that openness, joy begins to bloom without effort. You don't create it, you don't force it. It arrives the moment the inner war ends. You think suffering is your problem. No, your problem is that you cling to suffering because you are afraid of losing who you think you are. You are afraid of the unknown. Real happiness asks you to drop the false. This is why you fear it. This is why you suffer. In this talk, I will show you a truth that few people ever see. You are afraid of the freedom that real happiness brings. You talk about freedom. You write songs about freedom. But when freedom comes, you run back to your cage. Because in the cage, there is security. In the cage, there is lunch at 12 o'clock. In the forest, there is no guarantee. You cling to your sadness because it feels safe. You cling to your problems because they feel familiar. You cling to your old self because change feels like death. You will learn why the ego is terrified of joy, why happiness feels risky, and why every time you get close to joy, you pull back. I will show you how your mind uses fear to keep you small. How society teaches you to manage happiness instead of living it, and how you can break free from this strange prison. And I will guide you into a deeper space where happiness is not something you chase but something you relax into. A space where joy is natural, where peace is normal, where the heart is open and unguarded. I know how many of you feel inside you want happiness. You cry for it. But the moment life gives you a little joy, something inside you becomes tense. You contract. You wait for it to end. You look at the clock. You wait for something to go wrong. You feel guilty for feeling good. How can I be happy when the world is suffering? How can I be happy when my mother is sick? I tell you, your misery does not help your sick mother. Your joy might help her. Your misery only adds more misery to the world. You feel unworthy of anything bright. You feel safer inside your sadness because sadness does not demand change. Sadness lets you stay as you are. You can sit in your chair and cry forever. No effort is needed. But to dance takes energy. To dance takes courage, but this fear is not your nature. It is learned. You are taught to fear your own joy. You are taught to be careful with happiness, to not trust it, to not open to it fully. Don't laugh too loud, they said, or you will cry tomorrow. What a poisonous teaching. And this fear makes your life small. It keeps your heart half closed. It keeps you in a quiet prison. What I share here is not about forcing positivity. I am not telling you to put on a fake smile and say everything is wonderful. That is American nonsense. That is the positive thinking movement, which is very shallow. It is just suppressing the negative. I am talking about understanding the structure of your suffering, the hidden fear beneath your longing. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once it is seen, the prison starts to crack. In this journey together, I will show you why real happiness feels frightening, why your mind resists joy, why the unknown space of freedom feels unsafe to you. I will guide you through the layers of this fear, the fear of loss, the fear of change, the fear of love, the fear of openness, the fear of your true self. We will move gently, step by step, into the roots of this suffering. You will see how your mind learns to cling to familiar pain. You will see how happiness threatens the patterns you build to survive. You will see why joy feels like danger to the false self. And then we will go deeper into a new way of being, where happiness is not something you seek, but something you rest in, where you stop guarding your heart, where you stop preparing for sadness, where you stop running from joy. Some of what you hear will surprise you. Some may feel like a shock. Some may feel like a forgotten truth waking up inside you. Stay with me. Do not rush. This is not a race. Let each insight settle inside your breath. By the end, you will not fear happiness anymore. You will welcome it. You will open to it. You will live from it. But first, if you are finding value in this, if these words are striking a chord in your heart, consider becoming a member of this channel. Click the join button. It is a way to say yes to this work, yes to your own growth, or perhaps leave a super thanks. It is not about the money. It is about the energy of giving. When you give, you open. When you hoard, you close. As we step into this first doorway together, I want you to feel something very simple inside you. You say you want happiness. You say you want joy. You say you want freedom. But when life brings even a small taste of joy toward you, something inside pulls back, tightens, closes. Why? This is not because joy is wrong. This is not because happiness is far away. This is because you have lived with pain for so long that pain has become your home, your identity, your ground. You know the furniture of pain. You know where the walls are. And when something new comes, even something beautiful, the unfamiliarity feels like danger. The unknown is always perceived as danger by the biological mind. So you step back, you shrink, you return to what you know. This is the strange comfort of familiar pain, and it is one of the deepest reasons why you fear real happiness without ever realizing it. Here is something most people completely miss. You do not cling to sadness because you enjoy it. Nobody enjoys sadness. You cling to sadness because it is familiar. Pain is known, you know how to carry it. You have been carrying it for 30, 40 years. You have developed muscles for it. You know how to speak from it. I am a victim. Life is hard. You have a language for it. You know how to breathe inside it. You know how to live with it. Like an old coat that does not fit well, it is tattered, it smells, but it keeps you warm enough to survive, and you are afraid that if you take it off, you will freeze. Real happiness, however, is like stepping into sunlight after years in a dark room. The light is soft, warm, gentle, but your eyes hurt because they are not used to brightness. You squint, you want to close them again. The body trembles because it does not know what to do in such openness. The prisoner who is released walks strangely. He is used to shackles. The mind becomes confused because it cannot predict what comes next. In misery, everything is predictable. Tomorrow will be miserable. Next week will be miserable. There is a certainty. In joy, there is no prediction. Joy is spontaneous. Joy is wild. So instead of relaxing, you retreat. This is the stake of this moment. Why people suffer even when joy knocks on their door. Pain gives you identity. Pain gives you structure. Pain gives you a story about who you are. And the ego is terrified to lose that story, even if the story is full of suffering. When you feel sad, you know how to explain yourself. You have a vocabulary for it. You can say, I am depressed because of my childhood, or I am angry because of the government. It makes sense to people. It makes sense to you. You feel solid. When you feel heavy, you know how to navigate your day. You move slowly, you sigh, you look at the ground. It is a role you have perfected. When you feel hurt, you know how to protect yourself. You build a wall. But when happiness comes, it asks you to open. It asks you to throw away the map. It asks you to trust. It asks you to drop the armor you have carried for years. And this feels like nakedness. It feels like exposure. Suddenly, you are standing in the marketplace without your clothes. That is how joy feels to the ego. It feels like danger, even though it is not. It is only light. But to a creature of the shadows, light is a weapon. It might seem strange, even counterintuitive at first, but happiness takes courage. It takes much more courage than suffering ever demanded from you. Any coward can suffer. Look around you. Millions are doing it. It requires no bravery to be miserable. You just have to give up. You just have to drift downstream with the rest of the unconscious humanity. But to be happy, to be blissful, that is a rebellion. That is moving upstream. That is declaring to existence, I am awake. Suffering keeps you small, but it also keeps you safe from the unknown. If you are small, you think you cannot be hit by the lightning. If you are hiding in a hole, you think you are secure. Happiness invites expansion. It makes you big. It makes you vast. And expansion feels risky to the mind that has survived by staying tight. You have survived by being a closed fist. Joy asks you to become an open hand, and an open hand cannot hit. An open hand can only receive. An open hand is vulnerable. This is why many people touch a little joy, a good day, a loving moment, a soft breath, and immediately wait for something to go wrong. Have you caught yourself doing this? You are laughing and suddenly you stop. You think, I shouldn't be too happy. The gods will be jealous. Or if I laugh now, I will cry later. You prepare for the fall before you allow yourself to rise. You are climbing the ladder, but you are looking down at the ground, imagining the crash. You sabotage the joy before joy has even taken its first real step. You kill the flower before it blooms because you are afraid it will wither. but it was going to bloom. Imagine sitting in cold water for a long time. You have been in the freezing lake of misery for years. Your body becomes numb. The cold becomes normal. You don't even shiver anymore. You say, "This is life. Life is cold." Then someone invites you into warm water. Someone says, "Come, step into this hot spring." The warmth is soothing, healing. It is what your body needs. But when you first step in, what happens? The body aches, it tingles, it burns a little, the blood starts flowing again to the frozen parts, and that flow is painful, not because the warmth is harming you, but because your body forgot what warmth feels like. The nerves are waking up, so you step out, you run back to the ice, you return to the cold because the cold feels easier, it is less demanding, it is numb. This is exactly how you treat happiness. The warmth of joy is too new, too soft, too vast. It demands that you feel asterisk, and you are afraid to feel, so you retreat into the coldness of familiar pain. You choose the numbness of depression over the aliveness of joy. But something happens when you see this clearly, when you realize that you cling to pain not because it is good but because it is known. When you see, "My God, I am addicted to the ice," a new opening begins inside you. A small door cracks open, a deeper curiosity wakes up. You begin to ask, "What if I stayed in the warmth a little longer? What if I endured the tingling?" This curiosity is the beginning of freedom. It is the beginning of courage. It is the beginning of stepping toward the joy you were always meant to feel. If you are feeling this warmth now, if you are feeling the ice melting in your heart, do not just watch, participate, support this message. There is a super thanks button below. It is a small gesture, but it signifies a big shift in you from a passive consumer of information to an active supporter of consciousness. Or join us as a member. When you commit to the light commits to you. And once you understand why you cling to familiar pain, another truth becomes visible. The deeper fear behind your suffering, the one most people never even notice, your fear of joy itself. As we move deeper, I want you to feel the quiet shift happening inside you. You have begun to see that it is not pain that traps you. It is your attachment to pain. You are holding the bars of the cage. The door is unlocked, and once this becomes clear, another layer of truth rises to the surface. A truth that is softer, more subtle, and far more powerful. Here is something your mind never wants to admit. Happiness feels unsafe to you. Joy feels risky. Peace feels unfamiliar. And the mind, that old guard standing at the door of your heart, does not trust anything. It cannot predict or control. The mind is a control freak. It wants a timetable for everything. At 8 o'clock I will be happy. At 8:05 I will stop. So when happiness approaches, the guard becomes tense, alert, suspicious, as if joy were an intruder instead of a gift. Who goes there? Show me your identification. But joy has no ID card. Joy comes from the unknown. What I'm about to share might seem counterintuitive at first, but it will open a deeper understanding inside you. The ego, the false self you carry, survives on control. It lives on planning, predicting, managing, preventing, preparing. It is always building dams to control the river, and happiness, real happiness, cannot be controlled. You cannot manufacture it, you cannot package it. It flows when it wants to. It expands where it wants to. It is wild water. It softens you in ways you cannot anticipate. It takes you into spaces of openness where your old defenses have no use. Your armor is useless against a flower. And this scares the ego, because the ego needs walls. It needs tension. It needs conflict. It needs problems to define itself. Without a problem, who are you? Without a fight, who are you? So when joy comes, joy threatens the false identity you have spent years building. The ego whispers, "Be careful, don't trust this, don't open too much, don't let go." It creates tension where there could be softness. It creates doubt where there could be peace. It creates fear where there could be joy. Not because joy is dangerous, but because joy would dissolve the ego's control. And the ego would rather keep you safe inside a cage than free in the open sky. Think of standing near a cliff. The view is breathtaking. The air is fresh. The world opens wide before you, but the height makes your knees tremble. The ground feels unstable. The openness feels overwhelming. Nothing is wrong with the cliff. Nothing is wrong with the view. But the vastness frightens you because it is too big for the small sense of self you carry. You feel you might disappear into it. You feel you might fall. Happiness is like this cliff. It is vast. It is open. It is full of space. And your ego feels too small to stand inside such freedom. It is agoraphobic. It fears open spaces, so it pulls you back. It pulls you back to the small room of your misery. This is the unsafe feeling of joy. Not because joy brings danger, but because joy dissolves the boundaries you have built around yourself. It melts the ice cube. The ice cube is afraid of melting. It says, "If I melt, I will die." But the water says, "If you melt, you become the ocean." Joy asks you to let go of control. Joy asks you to release your grip on certainty. Joy invites you into the unknown, and the unknown feels like death to the ego. The ego cannot survive in openness. It needs a map. It needs a boundary. The ego cannot survive in freedom. This is why your mind tries to warn you. It is like a frantic parent. It says, "Don't get too happy. Remember what happened last time. Don't be a fool." It says something bad will happen. It says this won't last. It says you can't trust this. And these warnings feel like protection, but they are not. They are chains, thin chains, quiet chains, invisible chains, but chains nonetheless. They bind you to the rock of suffering. And once you believe these warnings, once you obey the fear instead of the joy, you begin to suppress your own happiness. You put a lid on the boiling pot. You dampen your own fire. You step back from moments that could expand you. You shrink from love that could open you. You say no when your heart wants to say yes. You walk away from opportunities that could uplift you. You prepare for sadness even when happiness is in front of you. You bring an umbrella when the sun is shining just in case. And because you are holding the umbrella, you miss the sun. And without realizing it, you train yourself to fear what should be your natural state. You have become an expert in being miserable. You have a PhD in unhappiness. But now that you see this, something begins to soften inside you. You cannot unsee it. Awareness is irreversible. A new awareness rises like a small light in a dark room. You start to understand why joy feels dangerous. You realize, it is not the joy that is dangerous. It is my ego that is trembling. You start to understand why you retreat even when life offers you beauty. And in this understanding, you begin to find freedom. You begin to laugh at the guard dog. Because once you know why happiness feels unsafe, you become ready to explore the deeper truth. Real joy does not just change your mood, it destroys your false self. This is the atomic power of joy. It dismantles the identity you built from fear, from wounds, from survival. It shatters the structure the ego depends on. And this brings us directly into the next revelation. The truth that joy, real joy, begins to break down the false self you've carried for years. Now we step into the truth, the fire. Most people never reach the truth that sits beneath the fear, beneath the tension, beneath the hesitation you feel whenever happiness comes close. They stop at the gate. I am inviting you to walk through the fire. You have seen that you cling to familiar pain. You have seen that happiness feels unsafe to the ego. And now we take the next step, the understanding that real joy does something radical. It destroys the false self you have spent your whole life protecting. This is why joy feels dangerous. This is why happiness feels like a threat. Because joy is not passive, joy is not weak, joy is not just a smile on a greeting card, joy is not soft, the way the mind imagines soft things to be. Real joy is fire. It is a consuming flame, a quiet fire, a gentle fire, a fire that burns away what is false, so that what is true can finally stand on its own. It burns the rubbish, it burns the lies, and when the lies are gone, you are naked. Here's something most people completely miss. Sadness does not threaten the ego. Pain does not threaten the ego. You can be miserable for lives and your ego will remain intact. In fact, it will get fatter. A miserable ego is a strong ego. Fear does not threaten the ego. These states reinforce the ego because the ego knows how to survive inside them. It feeds on them. It knows how to narrate suffering. Look at me, look how much I bear. It knows how to explain fear. It knows how to justify pain. But joy leaves the ego with nothing to cling to, nothing to justify, nothing to predict, nothing to defend. Joy is a vacuum to the ego. Joy is spacious, ego needs walls. Joy is free, ego needs cages. Joy is fluid, ego needs boundaries. This is why joy feels like danger to the false self. Joy doesn't fight it, joy dissolves it. Imagine darkness in a room. You can fight the darkness, you can curse it, you can push it with your hands, you can wrestle with it, you can do therapy on it. Why is this darkness here? Let us analyze the childhood of the darkness. You can scream at it, but nothing changes. The darkness remains because darkness is not a thing. It is the absence of something. It has no substance. And then you bring in a candle. You don't need to fight anymore. You don't need to struggle. The light appears and the darkness disappears on its own. It has to go. It has no choice. Joy is this candle. The false self is the darkness. And the moment joy enters, even for a second, the false self begins to melt. This melting feels like death to the ego. The ego screams, I am disappearing. But to your real self, it is birth, it is awakening, it is freedom. The shell is breaking and the bird is coming out. This is why joy frightens you. Not because joy is painful, but because joy reveals how much of your life has been built on the stories that were never true. It exposes your investment in lies. Joy shows you that your sadness was not your identity. Joy shows you that your fear was not your nature. Joy shows you that your old wounds do not define you. Joy shows you that your suffering was a habit the mind kept repeating, a robotic habit. And when these realizations appear, something inside you trembles, not because the truth is harmful, but because the truth is too big for the small self you have carried for so long. The ego begins to break, the old layers begin to crack, the statue is crumbling. The identity you have wrapped around yourself like armor begins to fall away, not because you push it away, but because it cannot survive the presence of real joy. Joy exposes every place you have lied to yourself. Joy reveals every mask you learned to wear. It pulls them off. Joy uncovers every wound you tried to hide. Joy brings light to the corners of your heart you forgot existed. It illuminates the basement. And this exposure feels like vulnerability, like nakedness, like stepping outside without armor. It feels like you have no skin. This is why joy feels frightening, because joy strips away your defenses. Joy asks you to live without pretense. Joy asks you to be authentic. Joy asks you to be real. Joy asks you to meet life as you are, not as a doctor, not as a husband, not as a rich man, not as a poor man, just as a being. And the ego, which survives only through hiding, panics in this openness. It runs around looking for a place to hide. But in joy, there is nowhere to hide. Everything is illuminated. But know this, the fear you feel is not the fear of joy. It is the fear of losing the false self you have outgrown. You are afraid to lose the corpse you are carrying. Drop it. Let the dead bury the dead. Joy is not your enemy. Joy is your teacher. Joy is your liberator. Joy is the force inside you that pulls the truth to the surface. When joy grows, the false self falls apart because it was never meant to last. It was only a survival strategy. It was useful in the jungle, but you are not in the jungle anymore. You are in the temple. It was only a temporary shell. And now that shell is cracking. This cracking is not destruction. It is transformation. It is the birth of a deeper self, a truer self, a softer self, a self that can breathe without fear, a self that does not need to control, a self that does not close when life opens, a self that is free. And once the false self begins to crumble, it reveals the next hidden truth. The one the ego fears most, the truth that joy asks you to surrender, to let go, to stop controlling everything, to trust the movement of life. This surrender is the hardest thing for the modern mind. We are trained to conquer, we are trained to fight, we are trained to achieve. Surrender sounds like defeat. But I tell you, surrender is the only victory in the spiritual world. The one who surrenders wins. The one who conquers loses everything. And that is where we now go next. Now that you have seen how joy melts the false self, now that you understand why the ego trembles when happiness touches your heart, we can enter the most delicate doorway of this section, the doorway of surrender. If you are ready to walk through this doorway, if you are ready to let the shell crack, type "I surrender" in the comments. Let it be a declaration. Let your words be a spell that breaks the old patterns. And if you want to help us keep this flame alive, consider purchasing one of the ebooks linked below. They are maps for this devotee. Real joy does not ask for effort. It is effortless. Real joy does not ask for achievement. You don't have to climb Everest. Real joy does not ask for control. Real joy asks for something far more frightening to the mind. It asks you to let go, to loosen your grip, to release the tension you have carried for years, to stop trying to hold life together with clenched fists, to allow yourself to be carried instead of always being the one who carries, to be the river, not the dam. This is the secret the ego hides from you. Happiness flows only when you stop trying to control it. What I am about to say may feel like a shock, but it is the gentle truth. Your suffering is not created by life. It is created by your constant attempts to control life. You are trying to push the river. You are trying to tell the clouds how to move. You try to control your feelings. You say, I must be happy now, and because you force it, you become sad. You try to control other people. You want them to behave in a way that suits you, and when they don't, you suffer. You try to control how happiness arrives, how long it stays, how deep it goes. You want a contract with existence, but existence signs no contracts. You try to control the timing of joy, the intensity of joy, the texture of joy. You try to hold happiness in your hands as if it were an object, a coin, a piece of gold, as if you could shape it, manage it, predict it. But joy is not a possession. Joy is a current. Joy is a wind. Joy is a river. And the moment you try to hold a river in your fist, it slips away. This is why joy feels so fragile to you. Not because joy itself is fragile. Joy is one of the most powerful forces in existence. It is the very stuff the universe is made of. But because your need for control suffocates it, joy cannot breathe inside a closed hand. Joy cannot move inside a tense body. Joy cannot expand inside a mind, trying to predict every step. Joy needs space. Joy needs softness. Joy needs surrender. Imagine holding water. Go to the river and scoop up some water. If you keep your hand relaxed, cup it gently, the water stays, it moves. It shines. It reflects the sun. It rests in your palm. It is there, alive. But the moment you tighten your fist, the moment you become possessive, the moment you say, this is mine, I must keep it, the water escapes through the cracks. You are left with a wet, empty hand, and you blame the water. You say, the water is deceptive. No, your fist was violent. This is exactly how you treat happiness. When joy comes, you panic, you tighten, you brace for loss, you hold your breath, you try to freeze the moment, you take a photograph to keep it forever, missing the moment itself. And in that freezing, the joy escapes, not because joy is unfaithful, but because joy cannot stay in a place of fear. Surrender does not mean losing control. This is the great misunderstanding. It means realizing you never had control to begin with. You are not driving the universe is driving you. It means understanding that life moves with or without your tension. The sun rises whether you worry about it or not. Your heart beats whether you command it or not. It means trusting the natural intelligence of your being, the natural intelligence of existence itself. Joy is not something you make. You cannot manufacture it in a factory. Joy is something that rises when you stop trying to manage your experience. It bubbles up when the manager goes on holiday. But here's the deeper truth. Surrender feels like death to the ego. The ego believes if I don't control everything, something bad will happen. It believes if I relax, I will be hurt. It believes if I trust joy, it will disappear. These beliefs are old. They are antiques. They were born from past wounds, from childhood fear, from moments when openness was not safe. Perhaps when you were 5, you opened up and someone laughed, so you closed, and you have remained closed for 50 years. And so your ego became your guard, your protector, your shield. But now, as an adult, you are living behind a shield that blocks joy more than it protects you from pain. A shield cannot distinguish between a sword and a flower. It blocks everything. Surrender is not about dropping the shield by force. You cannot fight the ego. Surrender is about realizing the shield is no longer needed. The war is over. Your presence is enough. Your awareness is enough. Your breath is enough. Your heart is enough. You are equipped for life just by being. When you begin to trust your own being, the need to control begins to soften. You become like a tree that trusts the wind. Does the tree worry about the storm? It bends, it dances, like a wave that trusts the ocean, like a bird that trusts the open sky. The bird does not carry a parachute. It trusts its wings. Surrender becomes natural, not forced. And as surrender grows, joy deepens. Joy becomes steady. Joy becomes warm. Joy becomes quiet, like a candle flame that no longer flickers because the windows are closed and the wind has stopped. You start to understand that happiness is not something you chase. It is something you allow. It is something you let in. It is something you relax into. Happiness is not outside you. It is inside you, waiting for you to stop gripping your own life so tightly. If you are feeling the grip loosen, if you are feeling the fingers of your mind relaxing, this is a beautiful moment. Honor it. Support this flow. You can use the super thanks feature to express your gratitude to existence for this reminder. Or simply share this video with a friend who is holding on too tight. Let the river flow. Now, with the ground beneath you becoming softer, with the heart becoming a little more open, we move into the next great layer of this journey. The layer where the mind reveals its tricks, its patterns, its subtle ways of keeping you away from joy. The mind is very cunning. It is a politician. It knows how to promise and how to deceive. As we leave the doorway of surrender and step deeper into this vast landscape of understanding, I want you to notice something subtle inside you. Whenever you begin to relax, whenever a little space opens in your heart, whenever a small taste of joy begins to rise, suddenly the mind becomes loud again. Have you watched this? Suddenly it begins to speak. Suddenly it begins to warn, to worry, to create tension where there was none. You were fine a moment ago. Then the mind said, but what about next year? What about your taxes? What about death? This is not an accident. This is not a flaw. This is the mind trying to survive. And what I will tell you now is simple, but it will explain much of your suffering. The mind needs problems to exist. Without problems, it feels lost. Without conflict, it feels useless. Without struggle, it has no job. The mind is a problem-solving machine. If there are no problems, the machine sits idle, and it hates to be idle. And so the mind, without knowing it, creates suffering simply to keep itself alive. It is self-perpetuating. Here is something most people never see. When you are peaceful, the mind fades into the background. It becomes a whisper. When you are joyful, the mind becomes quiet. When you are deeply happy, the mind has nothing to say. Have you ever noticed? In a moment of total ecstasy, can you think? No. Thinking stops. Happiness is the death of the restless mind. And so the mind, in its old habit of survival, protects itself by creating problems. It is fighting for its life. Not real problems, but imagined ones, remembered ones, future ones, exaggerated ones. It will invent reasons to worry. It is very creative. If you have no problems, it will borrow problems from your neighbor. It will worry about the world's situation. It will worry about the weather. It will remind you of past pain. Remember what he did to you 20 years ago? Why now? Because you were getting too peaceful. It wants to disturb you. It will whisper that something will go wrong. It will tell you to be careful with joy. It will even say, this is too good to be true. And you believe it, not because the mind is wise, but because the mind is familiar. You have lived with this roommate for so long, you think he is you. What I am about to share might feel like a gentle shock. Your mind is addicted to suffering, not because it enjoys pain. The mind is not masochistic, but because pain keeps it active. Pain is fuel. Drama is fuel. When everything is calm, the mind loses its position as your master. It begins to dissolve into the background, and awareness takes its place. Awareness is spacious, silent, open, and the mind fears that silence. The mind fears that spaciousness. The mind fears the unknown quiet of your own being. It is like a child afraid of the dark, but here the mind is afraid of the light. Imagine a worker in a factory. He has worked there for years. His identity is his job. His sense of worth comes from being busy. He turns the screws every day. If the machines stop, if the factory becomes silent, he panics. If there is no work, who am I? If I am not solving a problem, do I exist? If there is no emergency, what is my purpose? This is exactly how the mind behaves when you become peaceful. When joy rises, the mind feels unemployed. It gets a layoff notice. So it does what it knows. It creates noise. It creates fear. It creates inner alarms. It creates imaginary dangers to make you feel something is wrong. It starts the machine again, even if the machine is destroying you. This is why moments of joy often bring sudden anxiety. Have you felt it? You are having a wonderful dinner, laughing, and suddenly, boom, a dark thought, a worry, a contraction. This is why, after happiness, you often feel a strange tension. This is why you sometimes sabotage your own peace. You pick a fight with your lover just when things are going perfectly. Why? Because perfection is boring to the ego. Conflict is exciting. The mind is activating itself again, trying to regain control. It is like a fire alarm that rings even when there is no fire. Not because the fire exists, but because the alarm does not know how to be silent. It is broken. But here is the deeper truth. The mind is not your enemy. Do not hate the mind. Hate is also a relationship. Hate is also an attachment. It is simply untrained. It is a guard dog that barks at everything, even your own shadow. Even at the postman who brings you a gift, it barks. It wants to protect you, but it does not understand the difference between real threat and imagined threat. To the mind, a thought of a tiger is the same as a real tiger. The chemistry in the body is the same. It believes that activity is safety. It believes that worry is responsibility. It thinks, if I worry about my children, I am a good parent. No. If you love your children, you are a good parent. Worry drains you, love nourishes them. It believes that fear is intelligence. So it creates problems to keep itself alive. And once you see this, once you recognize the pattern, you stop taking the mind's alarm seriously. You hear the dog barking, and you say, it is okay, it is just the wind. You stop obeying its warnings as if they were truth. You start to see that most of the mind's noise is unnecessary, like a radio left on in an empty room. It chatters, let it chatter. You continue your dance. You begin to feel space again. You begin to breathe again. You begin to recognize that silence is not danger. Silence is your natural state. Silence is the soil from which the flower of joy grows. And this understanding opens the door to the next layer. The layer where you see exactly how your mind creates fear around happiness itself. Not because joy is dangerous, but because joy threatens the mind's entire identity. If you are ready to quiet the guard dog, if you are ready to retrain this mechanism, I invite you to go deeper. Check the link for my books in the description. Reading is a form of meditation. If the words come from a silent space, or join our community, the join button is a commitment to your own silence. As we walk deeper into the landscape of the mind, I want you to feel how the atmosphere inside your being changes the moment joy comes close. You have noticed it before, but you may not have understood it. Whenever happiness begins to rise, whenever a small light opens in your heart, whenever life gives you a taste of something pure and gentle and warm, your mind becomes restless. It becomes alert. It becomes suspicious. It begins to whisper warnings, as if joy were a threat, as if happiness were a danger waiting to explode. Watch out. It says, don't smile too wide. And now I will show you why this happens. Not in theory, but in the living truth of your inner world. Here's something most people completely overlook. The mind treats happiness like a risk. It does not trust joy, it does not trust ease, it does not trust simplicity. The mind evolved for survival, for scanning threats, for predicting danger. Millions of years in the jungle, it knows how to spot a snake. It knows how to run from a lion. It evolved to keep you alive, not to make you happy. Biology does not care about your happiness. It cares about your reproduction and your survival. Happiness is a luxury for the mind. So when you feel joy, the mind becomes confused. It says, why is everything calm? Why is there no problem? It scans the horizon. Where is the lion? If everything is peaceful, something must be wrong. Something bad must be coming. Prepare yourself. This is the logic of the mind. Peace is just the calm before the storm. And in this preparation, the mind creates the very fear that darkens your joy. It creates the storm it was afraid of. It might seem strange, but the mind is far more comfortable with fear than with happiness. Fear activates it. Fear sharpens it. When you are afraid, you are very alert. Fear gives it purpose. Fear gives it something to do. But happiness puts the mind out of a job. Happiness makes the mind quiet. Happiness softens you, and the mind interprets softness as vulnerability. If you are soft, you will be eaten. That is the jungle logic. But you are not in the jungle. You are in a civilized world mostly. You are in a space where softness is strength. If you relax, the mind says you will be hurt. If you open, you will lose something. If you trust joy, you will be disappointed. These are the whispers that shape your life without your awareness. These are the invisible scripts. Imagine a dog who has been hurt in the past. Even when you raise your hand gently to pet it, it flinches. You want to give love, but the dog expects a blow. It isn't reacting to you. It is reacting to memory. It is hallucinating the past. Your mind is the same. When joy approaches, the mind flinches. It pulls back. It snarls. Not because joy is dangerous, but because the past taught the mind to expect pain. You trusted once and you were betrayed. So the mind made a rule, never trust again. So the mind projects old wounds into new moments, creating fear where none exists, creating tension in moments that could have opened you, creating withdrawal in moments that could have expanded your heart. And here is the deeper problem. The mind thinks this fear is wisdom. It pats itself on the back. It thinks preparing for disappointment is intelligence. It calls itself a realist. A realist is just a cynic with a fancy name. It thinks expecting loss is maturity. It thinks suspicion is protection. So it builds walls around you, walls that were meant to keep you safe but now keep you imprisoned. You are safe, yes, safe from life, safe from love, safe from joy. You are safe in your coffin. The fear you feel around happiness is not an instinct. It is a habit, a bad habit, like smoking. You can quit it. A habit of the mind, a reflex, a pattern repeated so many times that it feels natural. Your mind is like a guard dog barking at everything, even good things, even gentle things, even joyful things. It doesn't know the difference. Its bark is not a sign of truth. It is a sign of conditioning. You have been hurt before. So the mind assumes hurt must come again. You have lost joy before. So the mind assumes joy must be temporary and dangerous. The mind cannot imagine that something good can last, that something soft can be trusted, that something bright can be real. The mind is a pessimist by nature, so it prepares you for pain, and in preparing you for pain, it creates pain. It creates the very atmosphere where joy cannot survive. Once you understand this, a new space opens inside you. You realize that the fear you feel around happiness has nothing to do with the present moment. It is an echo of the past. It is a shadow of memory. It is a ghost. It is the mind trying to protect you from something that is no longer happening. The war is over, but the soldier is still in the trench. And once you see that, you stop believing the mind's warnings. You stop shrinking from joy. You say, "Thank you, mind, for trying to protect me. But I am okay. I choose to be happy." You stop stepping away from moments that could nourish you. And with this new clarity, you become ready to see the next subtle trick of the mind. The illusion that happiness is too good to be true. How many times have you said this? It is too good to be true. The belief that something beautiful must be a trap. The quiet suspicion that joy cannot be real. Let us move into that layer next, where the mind begins to mistrust anything light, anything peaceful, anything loving, not because it is false, but because the mind itself is trapped in its old darkness. A blind man does not believe in light. A miserable mind does not believe in joy. As we move further into the quiet workings of the mind, I want you to notice something you have felt many times but may have never understood. There are moments, small, delicate moments, when life offers you something beautiful, a soft joy, a gentle peace, a spark of love, a sense of ease you did not expect, maybe just a cup of tea in the morning and the sunlight hitting the steam, perfect. And instead of relaxing into it, instead of allowing yourself to receive it fully, you hesitate, you tense, you look around as if something is suspicious, you wait for the moment to end, you check your watch, you tell yourself, this is too good to be true, and in that one thought, that one whisper of doubt, the mind closes the door to your own joy. You slam the door in God's face. What I'm about to share might feel like a quiet shock, but it is the truth. The mind does not trust what feels good. It thinks medicine must be bitter. If it tastes sweet, it must be poison. The mind does not trust what feels light. It trusts heaviness. It trusts seriousness. The mind does not trust what feels effortless. It believes in hard work. No pain, no gain, I say. No pain, no pain. Gain is effortless. Because the mind has been shaped in the fires of survival, not in the waters of peace. The mind believes that anything peaceful cannot be real, that anything simple cannot be safe, that anything joyful must be suspicious. It has been trained to believe that comfort is a trap, that ease is a warning, that joy is temporary and therefore dangerous. Don't get used to it, it says. This is the illusion that sits at the center of modern suffering, the belief that happiness is a trick, a setup, a false promise. So when something beautiful arrives, the mind does not relax. The mind prepares for disaster. It starts digging a bunker. It says, be careful, don't open too much, don't enjoy this too deeply. Something bad is coming. And because you listen to this whisper, you never fully enter the joy that was already yours. You stand on the threshold, shivering. Imagine walking in a peaceful garden. The sun is gentle, the wind is warm, the flowers sway lightly in the breeze. Everything is quiet and alive. It is paradise. But instead of enjoying it, you keep checking the path for snakes. You look under every rose bush. Where is the snake? I know he is here. You keep waiting for something to jump out. You keep preparing for danger even when no danger is present. You miss the roses because you are looking for snakes. And even if there are no snakes, you will hallucinate one. This is what your mind does every time. Life gives you beauty. The mind cannot believe that something so gentle can be real, so it looks for reasons to distrust it. And here is the deeper truth. The illusion of too good to be true was born from your past. The disappointments, the betrayals, the losses, the unhealed wounds. Because joy was once followed by pain, the mind now fears joy itself. It thinks joy * causes * pain. Because happiness once ended suddenly, the mind now sees happiness as the threat. Because you once opened and were hurt, the mind now avoids opening altogether. It says, if I don't open, I can't be hurt. Yes, but if you don't open, you are already dead. The mind does not understand time. It is always living in the past. It does not understand that the past is over. The mind believes every joy will end the same way it did before. It thinks history repeats itself. It only repeats if you remain unconscious. But what the mind calls wisdom is actually fear. What the mind calls caution is actually conditioning. What the mind calls realistic thinking is actually unhealed pain. The mind is not protecting you from the future, it is repeating the past. It is projecting yesterday onto tomorrow. And when you believe this illusion, something tragic happens. You sabotage your own happiness. You become the destroyer of your own joy. You withdraw from joy before joy even has a chance to root itself. You pull up the plant to check if the roots are growing, and you kill it. You pull away from love before love can deepen. You ruin the moment with fear before the moment can nourish you. You walk away from the gardens of your own heart because you think something dangerous must be hiding there. But now that you see this illusion clearly, something inside you begins to soften. You see the absurdity of it. You see the madness of it. You start to feel the possibility that joy may not be a trick, that happiness may not be a trick, that ease may not be a warning, that peace may not be temporary. Maybe, just maybe, peace is your nature. You begin to question the mind's suspicion. You begin to feel deeper into the moment. Instead of scanning for danger, you smell the flower instead of looking for the snake. You begin to trust your own experience more than the echoes of your past. And this opens the way to the next truth, a truth most people never see, a truth that keeps them bound in suffering even when life tries to open them. The truth is this: your mind has become addicted to suffering, not because you want to suffer, but because suffering is familiar. Suffering is known, suffering is predictable, and the mind clings to what is known, even if it hurts. And now we walk together into that next understanding. Now we enter one of the deepest layers of your inner world, a place most people never dare to look, a place so quiet and so hidden that even you may not have seen it until now. You have seen how the mind needs problems to survive. You have seen how the mind creates fear around happiness. You have seen how the mind mistrusts anything beautiful, peaceful, or easeful. And now we come to the very root of this pattern, the silent truth. Beneath your suffering, your mind has become addicted to pain, not because you enjoy suffering. Let us be clear about this. Nobody enjoys suffering. Masochism is a disease, but because pain keeps the mind active. No, the addiction is subtle, unconscious, woven through years of habit, memory, and emotional conditioning. Pain feels familiar, suffering feels known, sadness feels like home. And when something is familiar, the mind will always return to it, even if it hurts. It is like a tongue that constantly touches a painful tooth. It hurts, but you cannot stop touching it. Why? To remind yourself it is there. To remind yourself you are there. Suffering gives the mind something to do. It is an occupation. It gives the mind a shape, a direction, a tension to hold on to. Without suffering, without fear, without conflict, the mind feels transparent. It feels weightless. The mind does not know who it is without a burden. Here is something most people never realize. The mind is terrified of being unnecessary. The mind depends on friction. Friction gives it a sense of existence. Emotional friction, mental friction, relational friction. It uses these to maintain its importance. When joy arises, the mind becomes quiet. The friction stops. The wheels stop turning. But when the mind becomes quiet, something else awakens. Awareness. And awareness is the true master of your being. Awareness is spacious, calm, present. Awareness does not need to think. Awareness does not need to analyze. Awareness does not need problems to feel alive. Awareness simply is, and the mind fears this simplicity because in the presence of awareness the mind loses its throne. It becomes a servant, and it has been the master for so long it does not want to abdicate. So the mind clings to suffering because suffering keeps the mind in power. Suffering keeps you thinking, why am I sad? How do I fix it? Whose fault is it? Suffering keeps you analyzing. Suffering keeps you worrying. Suffering keeps you rehearsing old wounds. Suffering keeps you anticipating pain. Suffering keeps you in a state of tension, and tension energizes the mind. It is high voltage. This tension becomes a kind of inner fuel, a familiar electricity the mind uses to keep itself active. Without tension, the mind feels like it is dying. And in a way, it is. The false mind, the conditioned mind, the egoic mind dissolves in the presence of peace. It evaporates like mist in the morning sun. Imagine a person living in a house that leaks. The roof drips every night. The wind whistles through the walls. The floor is rotting. The cold bites through the rooms. It is a miserable house, and yet this person refuses to leave, not because the house is comfortable, it is hell, but because it is familiar. They know where the cracks are. They have named the cracks. They know where the wind comes in. They know how to arrange the furniture to stay warm enough to survive. They have developed a technique to live in misery. Leaving the house, stepping into a new home, a new environment, a new reality feels too uncertain. What if the new house is worse? What if I get lost? What if I don't know how to live in a palace? The palace is too open, too unknown. So they stay. They remain in a broken place simply because it is the place they know. This is exactly how the mind treats suffering. Suffering is not pleasant, but it is predictable. You know what to expect from your depression. You know what to expect from your anger. The mind prefers predictable pain over unpredictable joy. Joy is wild. Joy is dangerous to the status quo. Joy is open. Joy is fluid. Joy is alive. Joy gives the mind nothing to hold. It is slippery. Joy invites surrender, and surrender feels like death to the mind. So the mind sabotages joy to keep you in the emotional house. It understands, even if that house is leaking, cold and collapsing, even if that house is killing you. But once you see this pattern, once you see that your suffering is not coming from life but from your addiction to the familiar tension inside your mind, everything begins to shift. You stop being a victim. You realize you are the architect. You are the one keeping the roof leaking. A new space opens. A new question arises. A dangerous question. What would happen if I did not return to suffering? What would happen if I stayed with the unfamiliar feeling of peace? What would happen if I allowed joy to deepen instead of running from it? And in that moment of questioning, the addiction begins to crack. The hypnotic spell is broken. You start to notice the impulse to return to familiar pain, the urge to worry, to think, to predict, to tighten, to imagine danger. You start to see it not as truth but as a habit, a reflex, a mechanical pattern that is losing its power because you are watching it. And in that seeing, a new freedom begins to grow inside you. You are packing your bags. You are getting ready to leave the leaking house. But this is only the beginning, because once you recognize the mind's addiction to suffering, another door appears, a deeper door, a door that reveals what the mind is desperately trying to protect. The heart which has been wounded, guarded, armored, and terrified of joy, The heart which blocks happiness not because it is weak, but because it is sensitive, tender, and afraid of being hurt again. And now we walk toward that door, into the territory of the heart, where the real roots of your fear of happiness live. If you are ready to enter the heart, if you are ready to be tender again, show your support for this space we are creating. Hit the like button as a signal to your own heart that you are ready to open, or use the super thanks button to give back to the source of these teachings. It is a beautiful way to say, I am open to receiving and I am open to giving. Now we move from the mind into the heart, the deepest, softest, most vulnerable space inside you. Up until now, we have seen how the mind clings to suffering, how it mistrusts joy, how it builds illusions to keep you from stepping into freedom. But the mind is only half the story. It is the noisy neighbor. The other half, the quieter half, the truer half, lives in your chest. It lives beneath your ribs. It beats inside you like a forgotten drum. And it has carried wounds far older than your thoughts, far older than your fears, far older than your identity. This is the heart, and the heart is terrified of openness. Here is something I say to you with great gentleness. Please listen with your belly, not just your head. Your heart is not closed because it is weak. Do not condemn yourself. Do not say, I am hard-hearted. Your heart is closed because it remembers. It remembers every moment you opened and were hurt. It remembers every time you trusted and were betrayed. It remembers every time you loved and were left alone. It remembers every tenderness that was not met, every softness that was not received, every longing that went unanswered. The heart remembers the pain of openness. It has a memory deeper than the brain, and because of this memory, the heart becomes cautious, quiet, guarded. It learns a lesson. Openness equals pain. The heart retreats into a small room inside your chest, and it closes the door to protect itself from the world. It pulls down the shutters. This guarding becomes a habit, a reflex, a silent strategy. You may not notice it anymore because it has been with you for so long. It is like a chronic muscle tension. You forget you are holding it until someone touches it. It shows up in the way you brace before good things. It shows up in the way you keep an emotional distance from joy. You stand a little bit back, you don't jump in. It shows up in the way you feel a rising tension when you begin to relax. It shows up in the way you distrust happiness even when it stands right in front of you, offering you flowers. The heart fears openness because it equates openness with pain. It is a simple arithmetic for the wounded heart. Love plus openness equals suffering. And so when happiness approaches, the heart tightens. It physically contracts. When joy enters, the heart closes. When life tries to expand you, the heart retreats. Imagine a bird who spent years in a cage. The door was locked. The bird tried to fly, hit the bars, fell down, tried again, hit the bars, fell down. Eventually the bird learned flying hurts, the bars are the limit. One day the door opens, the owner has left, the cage is unlocked. The world outside is vast, blue, generous. The wind is calling, but the bird does not fly out. It trembles at the edge. It grips the metal bar with its claws. It stares into the sky with fear. Not because the sky is dangerous, the sky is its nature, but because the bird forgot how to trust the wind. It has forgotten its wings. This is your heart. It wants to open. It was made to open. A heart that is not open is not a heart. It is just a muscle pumping blood. A spiritual heart is an open sky, but it has forgotten how. And the sky, the joy, the love, the freedom, the happiness looks too vast, too open, too unknown. So your heart stays where it is, thinking the cage is safer than the sky. It chooses the prison because the prison has walls, and walls feel like protection. Your heart fears openness for one simple reason. Openness means vulnerability, and vulnerability means you can be touched deeply, touched fully, touched in ways that break the old armor you have carried. Happiness expands you, and expansion feels like exposure. Expansion lifts the roof of your inner room, and suddenly you can feel everything again: the rain, the sun, the wind, the beauty, the tenderness, the joy, the love, but also the risks that come with feeling. And the heart, confused and wounded, does not want to feel too much. It is overwhelmed, so it closes before opening. It chooses safety over aliveness. It chooses numbness over risk. It chooses a small life over a broken heart. But now that you are seeing this clearly, something begins to shift inside you. Awareness is like warm sunlight touching a frozen lake. Slowly the ice begins to melt. You can hear the cracking of the ice. It is a beautiful sound. Slowly the hardness softens. Slowly the old defenses begin to loosen. You realize that the armor is too heavy to carry anymore. You begin to understand that openness is not danger. It is life. To be closed is to be dead. To be open is to be alive. You begin to feel that vulnerability is not weakness, it is the greatest strength. Only a strong person can afford to be vulnerable. A weak person must hide behind armor. You begin to sense that feeling deeply is not a threat. It is the only way to live fully, and as you feel this softening, a deeper fear begins to reveal itself. The mind is a labyrinth. As soon as you solve one riddle, another appears. The fear of losing joy, once it arrives, this fear sits beneath the heart's armor like a quiet shadow. It is not the fear of opening. It is the fear of what will happen if you open and then happiness disappears. What if I fly and the sky vanishes? And this is where we go next. As we go deeper into the chambers of the heart, I want you to feel the subtle shift taking place inside you. You have begun to understand why the heart fears openness, why it trembles at the doorway of joy, why it hesitates before stepping into the vastness of life. But beneath that hesitation is an even more delicate fear, a fear so quiet and so hidden that most people never notice it at all. It is not the fear of joy itself. It is the fear of losing joy once you finally taste it, the fear of the end. This fear sits like a shadow under every moment of happiness, whispering in the background, shaping your emotions, shaping your reactions, shaping your entire life without your awareness. I say to you, this fear is one of the deepest roots of human suffering, because happiness does not harm you. Your fear of losing happiness does. Joy does not hurt you. Your anticipation of its end does. You are killing the moment because you are afraid it will die. The heart has been wounded in the past. It remembers the times when joy came softly, beautifully, tenderly, and then disappeared. It remembers the times when you opened yourself only to be met with abandonment. It remembers the times when you allowed yourself to love and life took something precious away. Death came, separation came, change came, and the heart in its innocence learned one thing: do not get too happy. Do not open too much. Do not trust joy, because joy does not stay. And so now whenever joy approaches, the heart becomes anxious. It checks the exit. You smile, but underneath the smile is tension. You are holding on. You enjoy the moment, but beneath the enjoyment is fear. You are taking photos instead of living it. You feel warmth, but beneath the warmth is the trembling thought: what if this goes away? What if I lose this? The heart pulls back, not because joy is painful, but because the possible ending of joy feels unbearable. It thinks it is easier to never open at all than to open and lose again. Better to have never loved than to have loved and lost. That is the motto of the coward. I say, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Because in love, you become; in loss, you deepen; in closing, you rot. The heart, unable to hold the movement of life, chooses the unmoving ground of suffering instead. It chooses a graveyard, because in a graveyard nobody dies anymore. They are already dead. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean. The water is warm, clear, inviting. It touches your feet, then pulls away. It returns, then retreats. It moves in waves. Waves of beauty, waves of softness, waves of life. And yet, instead of stepping into the water, you stay on the shore. Not because the water is cold, not because the water is dangerous, but because the waves come and go and you fear the moment they will pull away. You want permanence in a world that is constantly moving. You want a wave that freezes. A frozen wave is ice. It is not a wave. You want guarantees in a world where nothing stays the same. And the heart, unable to dance with the flux, chooses the stone of misery. This is the prison of the fear of losing joy. You do not fully enter joyful moments. You stand on the porch. You do not fully breathe into happiness. You take shallow breaths. You do not fully open to love. You keep one foot out the door. You do not fully trust peace because a quiet voice inside says this will end. Protect yourself now. But what the heart does not understand is that joy cannot be held, happiness cannot be owned, love cannot be possessed, peace cannot be frozen in time. Life moves like breath in and out, in and out. And when you fear the exhale, you never fully inhale. You suffocate. When you fear the ending, you never fully begin. You are half born. When you fear the loss, you never fully receive the gift in front of you. Here is the truth. Joy does not hurt you. The ending of joy does not hurt you. Everything that begins must end. That is the law. What hurts is the resistance. What hurts is the clinging. What hurts is the attempt to make something stay that was never meant to stay. You are trying to hold a sunset. You cannot hold it. You can only witness it. When you allow joy to flow like a river, like a breeze, like sunlight moving across a room, it no longer frightens you. You learn to enjoy the presence of joy without demanding its permanence. You become a lover of the moment. You learn to welcome happiness without holding it tight. You hold it like a butterfly on your open palm. If it stays good, if it flies good, you learn to trust that what leaves may return in another form or may open space for something new. If the sun sets, the stars appear. If you cry for the sun, you miss the stars. And now, with your heart beginning to soften, with your fear starting to loosen, another truth reveals itself, a truth even more tender, even more personal, even more hidden. The belief that you do not deserve happiness at all. Not that joy is temporary, not that joy is unsafe, but that joy belongs to others, not to you. That your wounds disqualify you from joy, that your past mistakes make you unworthy of peace, that something in you is too broken to feel happiness fully. I am damaged goods, you tell yourself. And now we walk gently into that deepest layer, the fear of receiving joy because you believe you are unworthy of it. If you are ready to heal this wound of unworthiness, stay with me. This is the surgery. And if you feel moved to support this healing work, click the join button below. Become a member of this growing consciousness. It is a way of telling the universe, I am investing in my own soul. Now we step into the most tender room of the heart, the quiet room you have kept closed for many years, the room where you hide the heaviest belief. You carry the belief that you do not deserve happiness. This is the rock beneath all other wounds. This is the root beneath all other fears. This is the silent whisper that shapes your choices, your relationships, your dreams, your limits, your entire emotional life. And most people never see it because this belief does not scream. It hides, it sits in the shadows. It holds your heart gently but tightly, and until you see it, you will always fear joy. No matter how much you think you want it, I say to you, this feeling of unworthiness is not natural. It was taught to you, it was given to you, it was planted in your heart long before you could understand what was happening. Maybe your family taught you to earn love instead of receiving it. If you get good grades, we love you. If you are quiet, we love you. Love became a wage. Maybe you were made to feel that you had to be good, perfect, successful, obedient, quiet, or impressive in order to be worthy of affection. Maybe you were told directly or indirectly that your joy was too loud, too much, too inconvenient, too fragile. Stop laughing, they said, and you stopped. Maybe someone shamed your happiness. Maybe someone ignored it. Maybe someone mocked it. Maybe someone punished you for feeling alive. The heart remembers these moments. It records everything. And slowly, quietly, without your awareness, the heart began to believe happiness is not for me. Happiness is for special people. I am ordinary. This belief becomes a filter, a lens, a story, a silent contract with yourself. So even now as an adult, when happiness approaches, something inside you steps back. Something inside you says, not me, not yet, not like this. You shrink before the moment expands. You reject joy before joy can land. You act humble, but it is not humility, it is self-rejection. You create small reasons to sabotage good things. You spill the wine. You forget the date, you say the wrong word, you walk away from opportunities that could nourish you, you keep your desires half alive, you keep your dreams half possible, and your heart remains half open, not because joy is wrong, but because you feel wrong for wanting it. Imagine someone giving you a beautiful gift, a gift wrapped in care, in softness, in sincerity. And instead of opening it, you hide it in a drawer because you feel you don't deserve something so beautiful. It is too expensive for me, you say. It sits there waiting for you, untouched, unseen, unreceived. Not because the gift was unworthy of you, but because you were convinced you were unworthy of the gift. This is how you treat happiness. Life hands it to you in small moments, in laughter, in connection, in quiet mornings, in warm sunlight, and you hide it in a drawer inside your chest. You save it for a special occasion. But life is the special occasion. The illusion of unworthiness is powerful because it feels like truth. It feels like something you are, not something you learned. It feels like identity, not injury. It feels natural, not imposed. But it is a lie, a total, absolute lie. A lie created by the wounds of your past. A lie reinforced by people who were also wounded, also afraid, also unable to receive joy themselves. Hurt people do not teach happiness, they teach fear. They can only share what they have. Sleepwalkers do not teach wakefulness, they teach how to sleepwalk comfortably. And so your unworthiness is inherited, not chosen. It is a disease passed down through generations. But here is the deeper truth. You were born worthy. You were born open. You were born with a heart designed to feel joy. Worthiness is your nature. Unworthiness is the conditioning. Worthiness is your essence. Unworthiness is the shell. Worthiness is the flame inside the shell. Unworthiness is the dust that settled over it. And now, as awareness returns to your being, you begin to blow gently on the flame. The dust begins to move. The light begins to appear. Something inside you whispers again, maybe I am allowed to feel good. Maybe I am allowed to open. Maybe I am allowed to receive. Once you begin to see the illusion of unworthiness, it loses its power. You stop taking its voice seriously. You start to laugh at it. Ah, there goes the old record again. You begin questioning the stories that kept you small. You begin seeing that every human being is worthy of love, peace, joy, including you, especially you. You begin to soften in the places where you once hardened. You begin to breathe into spaces where you once held your breath. You begin to allow moments of joy to enter without pushing them away. And as this softening takes place, something miraculous happens. The heart begins to trust. It is tentative at first, like a deer stepping into a clearing. It looks around. Is it safe? But as you stay with the feeling, as you refuse to run back to the old unworthiness, the trust grows. The heart opens a little wider, and then a little wider. And suddenly you are not just watching the sunset, you are the sunset. The separation disappears. This is the return to innocence. This is the return to your original face. But to reclaim this innocence, you must understand another trick of the ego. The ego loves to be special, and if it cannot be special through happiness, it will try to be special through suffering. Here is a strange truth. The ego would rather be a famous victim than a happy nobody. If you are happy, you are ordinary. Happiness is very ordinary. Trees are happy. Birds are happy. Animals are happy. To be happy is to be just part of the chorus of existence. There is no news in it, but to be miserable, that makes you unique. Nobody suffers like I do. My pain is deeper than yours. My tragedy is more complex than yours. You wear your misery like a badge of honor. It gives you a sense of separation. It gives you a definition. If I take away your misery, you feel like you are disappearing. You become just a breeze passing through the trees. You become space, and the ego hates space. The ego wants to be a solid rock. Even if that rock is crushing your chest, at least it is solid. This is why you cling to unworthiness. It makes you feel solid. I am the unworthy one. That is an identity. I am the one who always fails. That is an identity. I am the one who was betrayed. That is an identity. Drop it, be a nobody, be nothing. And in that nothingness, you will find everything. In that nothingness, you will find the whole universe dancing. If you are ready to be a nobody, if you are ready to drop the heavy identity of the sufferer, type "I am ready" in the comments. Let this be your declaration of independence from the ego. And if you want to support this channel to help us wake up more nobodies, become a member by clicking join. It is a small step for you, but a giant leap for your consciousness. Now let us move to the responsibility of joy. This word responsibility has been corrupted. You think it means duty. You think it means a burden. I have responsibilities, you say with a heavy face. No, responsibility simply means responsibility. The ability to respond to life not with a reaction from the past, but with a fresh response in the present. Until now, you have been reacting. A reaction is mechanical. Someone pushes a button and you get angry. Someone pushes another button and you get sad. You are a machine. Responsibility means you disconnect the buttons. You say, I will choose my response. And the greatest responsibility you have is to be joyful. People think, I am responsible for my family, for my job, for the country. I say no. First, be responsible for your own being. If you are miserable, what can you give to your family? Only your misery. You can only give what you have. If you are unhappy, you will poison your children. You will poison your wife. You will poison your husband. You will do it with good intentions, but you will poison them. A miserable father cannot help but create a miserable atmosphere. He is a cloud blocking the sun. So your first duty, if you want to use that word, is to be blissful. When you are happy, you are a gift to the world. When you are happy, you are a blessing to your neighbors. When you are happy, you are a light. But to take this responsibility, you have to stop blaming. This is the hardest part. You love to blame. Blame is a sweet poison. I am unhappy because of my childhood. Maybe your childhood was terrible. I am not denying that. But your childhood is over. It is a ghost. It exists only in your memory. I am unhappy because of my wife. I am unhappy because of the economy. As long as you blame, you remain a slave, because if your happiness depends on the other changing, you will wait forever. The other is not going to change. Why should they? The moment you say, I am responsible for my inner state, you are free. It is a scary freedom at first, because now, if you are miserable, you cannot point the finger. You have to look in the mirror, but it is the only freedom there is. You realize, I am doing this to myself. I am pinching my own skin. I am carrying this stone. And the moment you see you are doing it, you can stop doing it. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need the world to change. You just open your hand. This is the shift from victimhood to mastery. A victim waits for a savior. A master saves himself. A victim demands that the world be soft. A master wears sandals. Be a master. And do not think this is selfish. This is the most unselfish thing you can do. A happy person does not create wars. A happy person does not kill. A happy person does not accumulate billions of dollars while others starve. Why would he? He is already rich inside. Happiness is the only cure for the madness of this world. So if you feel guilty for being happy, drop that guilt. That guilt is manufactured by the priests and the politicians who want you to remain sheep. They want you to feel guilty, so you will go to the church, so you will go to the party, so you will follow the leader. A happy man follows no leader. He follows his own light. Apadipo bhava, said Buddha. Be a light unto yourself. He did not say, follow me. He said, be a light. And how do you light this lamp? By simply watching, by simply witnessing the machinery of your mind without getting caught in the gears. You watch the judgment arise. I am not good enough. You say, hello, judgment. You don't fight it. You don't believe it. You just watch it pass like a cloud. You watch the fear arise. What if I lose everything? You smile at it. Ah, the storyteller is back. And in that watching, the distance grows, the identification breaks, and in that gap, joy rushes in. It has been waiting outside the door for years, knocking gently, but the noise of your mind was too loud. Now the noise is less. Now the door is ajar, and joy enters. It enters as a sense of ease. It enters as a deep breath. It enters as a sudden appreciation for the color of the leaves. It enters as a feeling of it is good to be alive. Just that, not it is good to be alive because I won the lottery. No, it is good to be alive, period. This is unconditional joy. And once you taste this, you will never settle for the cheap substitutes again. You will never settle for pleasure, which is just a momentary relief from pain. Pleasure is biological, joy is spiritual. Pleasure depends on the other, joy depends on you. Pleasure wears you out, joy rejuvenates you. Now, as we approach the deeper waters of this communion, I want to talk about the void. This is what terrifies you the most. When you stop the noise of suffering, when you stop the drama of the ego, when you stop the constant running, what is left? Silence, emptiness, the void. And the mind calls this boredom. The mind is terrified of boredom. Have you noticed you cannot sit alone in a room for 10 minutes without your phone, without the television, without a book? You get fidgety, you start tapping your foot, you look for a distraction. I need to do something. Why? Because in that silence, the repressed parts of you begin to surface. In that silence, you have to face yourself, and you have been running from yourself for a long time. Boredom is just a layer. It is the gatekeeper. If you stay with the boredom, if you do not run away, if you watch the boredom, suddenly it transforms. The boredom becomes peace. The boredom becomes spaciousness. It is like drilling for water. First you get mud, then you get rocks. It is hard work. You want to stop. There is no water here, only mud. But if you keep drilling, if you go deeper than the mud, suddenly a fountain, pure crystal clear water. Most people stop at the mud. They stop at the boredom. They turn on the TV. They call a friend. They drink alcohol. They numb themselves and they miss the fountain. I am inviting you to drill deeper. Do not be afraid of the mud. Do not be afraid of the silence. The silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of presence. It is full of God. God is not a person sitting on a cloud. God is this silence. God is this spaciousness. When you are silent, you are God. When you are noisy, you are a person. Choose, and this choice happens every moment. It is not a one-time choice. Today, I choose silence. No, right now, and now, and now. Every time the mind offers you a distraction, a worry, a drama, you have a choice. Do I engage or do I return to my breath? Do I pick up the stone or do I leave it? Do I argue with the ghost or do I walk through him? This is the practice. This is the sadhana. And you don't need a cave in the Himalayas. You can do this in the marketplace. You can do this in the office. You can do this in the traffic jam. In fact, the traffic jam is a beautiful place for meditation. Everyone is honking, everyone is angry, and you are sitting there watching the breath. You are in the world, but not of it. You become a lotus flower in the mud. The mud is necessary for the lotus, but the lotus is not the mud. Use the world as your mirror. Every time you get triggered, say, thank you. Thank you for showing me where I am still asleep. Thank you for showing me where I am still attached. Thank you for showing me where I still have buttons. If your boss insults you and you get angry, thank your boss. He is your guru. He is showing you that your ego is still alive and kicking. If he insults you and you laugh, then you have graduated. Then the boss has no power over you. This is true power, not power over others. That is violence. Power over yourself, that is mastery. And when you have this mastery, joy is your shadow. It follows you everywhere. You don't have to look for it. You can't lose it. It is you. Now I want to address a very subtle trap that happens on this path, the trap of spiritual seriousness. You start meditating, you start listening to Osho, and you become serious. You get a long face, you think you are doing holy work. I am working on myself. I am processing my karma. You become heavy, you lose your sense of humor. I tell you, seriousness is a disease. Seriousness is the cancer of the soul. Life is not a business, it is a play. It is a Leela. Look at the trees, are they serious? Look at the birds, are they worried about their karma? Look at the stars. Existence is playful. It is overflowing with energy for no reason. Why are there so many flowers? One type would be enough. Why so many colors? Existence loves variety. Existence loves to dance. If your spirituality makes you serious, you are going wrong. You are moving toward death, not life. True spirituality brings laughter. Laughter is the highest prayer. When you laugh, your ego disappears. You cannot have an ego and a belly laugh at the same time. Try it. In a deep laugh, thinking stops, time stops. You are purely present. So laugh at your problems. Laugh at your suffering. It is ridiculous. You are an immortal spirit acting like a beggar. It is a cosmic joke. When you see the joke, you are enlightened. Enlightenment is nothing but getting the joke. My God, I was searching for my glasses and they were on my nose the whole time. You are searching for God, searching for joy, searching for peace, and you are the stuff joy is made of. So lighten up. Drop the heavy cross. Jesus carried it long enough. You don't need to carry it too. Drop the guilt. Drop the shame. Drop the shoulds and musts. Be wild. Be chaotic. Be alive. Allow the joy to bubble up without reason. If people think you are crazy, good. Better to be a happy, crazy person than a miserable, sane person. The sane people have created this insane world. The sane people have created nuclear weapons. The sane people are destroying the planet. We need more crazy people, crazy with love, crazy with joy, crazy with silence. Will you be one of them? If you feel this craziness stirring in you, this bubbling of uncaused joy, share it, share this video, spread the madness. And if you value this space of sanity in an insane world, give us super thanks. It helps us keep the lights on for others who are still stumbling in the dark. Now, we must look at the future. The mind is always looking at the future. I will be happy when. This is the postponement of life. I will be happy when I retire. I will be happy when the kids grow up. I will be happy when I find my soulmate. You are waiting for the train at the airport. The train is never coming. Life is always now. There is no then. Have you ever experienced tomorrow? No. When it comes, it is always today. So if you are not happy today, you will never be happy, because it is always today. You are postponing living. You are preparing to live, but never living. You are making the bed, smoothing the sheets, fluffing the pillows, but you never sleep in it. Stop preparing, jump in, eat the food with total awareness, taste every spice, look at the face of your beloved. Really look, feel the water in the shower. This is the only paradise there is. This moment, if you miss this, you miss everything. And what stops you from being here? Hope. Hope is a beautiful word, but a dangerous thing. Hope means future. Hope means not now. Hope means you are dissatisfied with the present. I say drop hope. Be hopeless. When you are totally hopeless, when you accept that this is it, suddenly you relax. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to achieve. And in that relaxation, the present moment reveals its gold. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The dust becomes divine. You see that you were already in paradise, but you were too busy looking at the map to notice the scenery. Burn the map. Look at the territory. And as you begin to live in the now, you will notice that your fear of death begins to disappear. The fear of death is actually the fear of unlived life. If you have lived fully, if you have squeezed the juice out of every moment, you are ready to go. You are satisfied. A guest who has eaten a great meal is ready to leave the table. But if you have been fasting, if you have been waiting, if you have been postponing, then death is a terror. I haven't lived yet, I need more time. But more time will not help you if you don't know how to use this time. You will just waste the extra time too. So live now, die to the past every moment, and be born again to the present. This is the resurrection. It is not a historical event. It is a daily practice. Now I want to take you into a guided experience, not a meditation where you close your eyes and sleep, but a waking looking. I want you to look at your suffering right now. Bring it to your mind. The thing that is bothering you the most, the heaviness. Now look at it. Don't analyze it. Just look at the sensation of it. Where is it in your body? Is it in the stomach, in the chest, in the throat? Give it a shape. Is it a stone, a cloud, a knot? Now ask yourself, is this me? Am I this sensation? Or am I the one watching the sensation? The moment you ask this, a separation happens. The sensation is there, but you are here. You are the witness, and as the witness, you are free. The fire cannot burn the witness. The sword cannot cut the witness. The water cannot drown the witness. You are the eternal witness. Rest in that witnessing, even for 1 second. That 1 second is a taste of eternity. And once you have tasted it, you will want more. Not out of greed, but out of love. You will want to live in that space, and you can. It is your birthright. It is not reserved for Buddhas. You are a Buddha who has forgotten he is a Buddha. You are a king who has amnesia and thinks he is a beggar. I am just here to shake you, to wake you up, to say, look at your crown. You are not the beggar. You are the emperor. Reclaim your kingdom, the kingdom of the present moment, the kingdom of the open heart, the kingdom of the silent mind. It is yours. It has always been yours. Stop begging. Start giving. Start overflowing. And you will see that the more you give, the more you have. That is the mathematics of the inner world. It is the opposite of the outer world. In the outer world, if you give money, you have less. In the inner world, if you give love, you have more. If you give joy, you have more. So be a spendthrift with your joy. Waste it. Throw it around. Don't hoard it. Hoarded joy turns into poison. Flowing joy remains fresh. Be a river, not a pond. And when you become a river, you eventually reach the ocean. This is the destiny of every drop of water. But the river trembles before it enters the ocean. Have you ever watched a river entering the sea? It hesitates, it looks back, it remembers the mountains, the forests, the villages it has passed. It remembers its identity as a river. I am the Ganges, I am the Nile, I am the Amazon. It fears that entering the ocean means disappearing. It fears it will lose its name, its form, its history. This is exactly your fear of joy. You think that if you dissolve into joy, you will be lost. And you are right. The you that you know, the miserable you, the limited you, the complaining you, will be lost. But what you gain is oceanic. You become the ocean. You become vast, infinite, depthless. This brings us to a crucial distinction that you must understand if you want to sustain happiness. The difference between loneliness and aloneness. Most of your suffering comes from the fear of being lonely. You cling to your misery because at least misery keeps you company. You cling to bad relationships because at least someone is there. You cling to the noise of the mind because silence feels like an empty hole. You run from loneliness. You fill it with food, with entertainment, with gossip, with work. You are constantly stuffing the hole. But I tell you, don't run. Turn around and look at the hole. Loneliness is a misunderstanding. Loneliness is when you are missing the other. It is a state of poverty. You are saying, I am not enough. I need someone else to make me whole. But a loneliness is when you have found yourself. It is a state of richness. It is a state of fullness. When you are alone, you are not missing anyone. You are overflowing with your own being. You are so full that you can share, you can give, you can love, not out of need, but out of abundance. Joy flowers only in aloneness. If your joy depends on another person, it is not joy, it is just excitement. It is a drug, and like any drug, it will have a hangover. When the person leaves or changes or dies, you will crash. You will be in withdrawal. But if your joy rises from your own aloneness, from your own center, nothing can take it away. It is yours. It is uncaused. Society has taught you that to be alone is to be sad. Look at that poor man. He is all alone. I say, look at that emperor. He is all alone. He needs no crutches. He needs no validation. He is complete unto himself. This shifts your entire approach to relationships. And relationships are often the biggest source of your suffering, are they not? When two lonely people meet, it is not love, it is a mutual agreement to use each other. I will use you to cover my loneliness, and you will use me to cover yours. It is a business deal. And like all business deals, there is conflict. You are not covering my loneliness well enough. You are not making me happy. You blame the other. If only my husband were different, I would be happy. If only my wife understood me, I would be joyful. Rubbish. Even if you married God Himself, you would still be miserable. If you have not found your own aloneness, you would probably complain that God is too busy running the universe to pay attention to you. Stop using others as a bandage for your wounds. When you find joy in your own being, when you are happy just sitting in your room doing nothing, then you are ready for relationship. Then relationship becomes a sharing. It is not a need, it is a luxury. You have so much joy that you want to pour it into someone else. And if two such people meet, two people who are alone and joyful, that is love. That is the highest possibility. Then there is no conflict, because there is no demand. There is only giving. I give because I have too much. Please take it. No, you take mine, I have too much. It is a competition of giving. And in that competition, both win. But to reach this state, you must face the fear of the void we spoke of earlier. You must be willing to sit with yourself until the loneliness transforms into aloneness. It is like alchemy. The heat of your awareness burns the impurity of need and leaves the gold of being. If you are understanding this distinction, if you are feeling the difference between the poverty of loneliness and the richness of aloneness, mark this moment. Subscribe to this channel as a reminder of your own completeness, or use the super thanks button to share your abundance. A person who gives is a person who knows they have enough. Now, let us look at how the mind uses time to destroy joy. The mind lives in time. It lives in the horizontal line, past, present, future. Joy lives in the vertical line, depth, height. Joy has no time. Have you noticed? When you are truly happy, time disappears. You look at the clock and say, my God, 3 hours have passed. It felt like a minute. When you are in pain, time stretches. 5 minutes of toothache feels like an eternity. So mind is time. Joy is timelessness. To live in joy, you have to step out of time. You have to step out of the clock. This means you stop carrying the past. You are carrying a cemetery on your shoulders. All the dead things, all the insults, all the failures, all the old lovers, all the old arguments. Why are you carrying them? They are heavy, they stink. Drop the corpse. Every morning, wake up as if you were just born. Tabula rasa, a blank slate. Look at your wife as if you are meeting her for the first time. Look at your house as if you just walked in. Look at the sky as if you have never seen it. This freshness is the essence of joy. The mind says, I know this. I have seen the sky 1,000 times. The mind is bored. The mind is old. But you are not the mind. You are consciousness. And consciousness is always new. Can you try this experiment? For the next hour, look at everything without the label of the past. Don't say rose, just look at the redness. Don't say my boss, just look at the human being. Remove the labels, and suddenly the world becomes magical again. The world becomes vibrant. You see, suffering is nothing but looking at the world through a screen of dusty words. Wipe the screen clean. This brings us to the ultimate fear that blocks your joy, the fear of death. We touched on it, but now we must embrace it. You cling to misery because misery feels like life to you. It is a heavy, dense life, but it is life. Joy feels light, airy, disappearing. It feels like dying. And in a way it is, the ego must die for joy to be born. You cannot have both. You cannot have your ego and eat it too. You have to choose. Do I want to be someone and miserable, or no one and blissful? Most people choose to be someone. They want the name, the fame, the recognition, the solidity, and the price they pay is suffering. I am inviting you to choose to be no one, to be a hollow bamboo. And when you are hollow, existence can play its song through you. You become a flute, Krishna's flute. But if you are full of yourself, full of your opinions, your judgments, your cleverness, the air cannot pass through. There is no music, only noise. The art of dying is the art of living. Die to your ego every day. When someone insults you, don't defend, just watch. Let the insult pass through you as if you are empty space. If you are a rock, the insult will hit you and hurt. If you are empty space, the insult will pass through and hit the wall behind you. Why be a rock? Be space. And when you are space, you are indestructible. You are eternal. This is the great secret. The one who is afraid of death has not really lived. The one who lives fully welcomes death as a rest, as a great sleep after a beautiful day. Now let's talk about the serious seekers. I see many of you in the comments or in the world trying so hard to be spiritual. You are fasting, you are chanting, you are reading all the books. You are very serious about your enlightenment. Please stop it. Enlightenment is not a trophy. It is not a gold medal at the Olympics. You cannot achieve it. You can only relax into it. Your seriousness is just another form of ego. I am a spiritual person. I am better than those materialistic people. This is the spiritual ego, and it is the hardest one to break. It is like a chain made of gold. Iron chains are easy to break, but gold chains, you want to keep them, you polish them. Joy is not serious. Have you ever seen a serious flower? Have you ever seen a serious cloud? God is not serious. If God were serious, He would not have created the platypus. He would not have created the giraffe. He has a sense of humor. Laugh your way to God. Dance your way to God. Do not march like a soldier. Dance like a drunkard, drunk on the divine. When you are drunk on existence, you don't care about right and wrong. You don't care about success and failure. You just stagger from one beautiful moment to the next. This is the path of the mystic, the path of the lover. And on this path, suffering creates itself only when you sober up, when you start thinking again. So stay drunk, drunk on awareness, drunk on gratitude. Gratitude is the master key. If you can be grateful for everything, even the headache, even the lost job, even the rainy day, suffering cannot enter. Gratitude is the light that dispels the darkness of complaint. The mind loves to complain. The coffee is too cold. The traffic is too slow. The government is corrupt. Complaint, complaint, complaint. It is a cancer. Try this for 24 hours. No complaints. Whatever happens, say thank you. If you miss the bus, say thank you. Now I have time to look at the sky. If you get sick, say thank you. Now I have time to rest and go inward. Turn everything into a blessing. This is the alchemy I am teaching you. You have the power to turn poison into nectar. The poison is the event. The nectar is your attitude. The event is neutral. The bus left, that is a fact. This is bad, is an opinion. This is good, is an opinion. Choose the opinion that liberates you. Or better yet, have no opinion. Just the bus left, okay. This okayness is the flavor of enlightenment. Ta-ta-ta. Suchness. Things are as they are. The dog barks, the wind blows, you are listening to me. Everything is perfect as it is. The moment you accept this perfection, the war ends. You are no longer fighting with reality. And when you stop fighting, you start floating towards the ocean. Now I want to address a specific question that arises in many of you. Osho, if I am always happy, will I lose my ambition? Will I become lazy? This is the fear of the ambitious mind. It thinks that only misery motivates. If I am not afraid of poverty, I will not work. If I am not afraid of being a nobody, I will not strive for success. And I say, yes, your neurotic ambition will disappear. Your feverish running will stop. But a new kind of action will arise. Action that comes from overflow. A painter paints not to become famous, but because he has so much color inside him, he must share it. A singer sings not to sell records, but because the song is bursting out of her. You will work, but it will not be labor. It will be play. You will create, but it will not be for the outcome. It will be for the joy of creating. This is the difference between a slave and a creator. A slave works because he has to. A creator works because he loves to. Your life will become a work of art. You might not become the richest man in the graveyard, but you will be the most alive man in the marketplace. And isn't that what you truly want, to be alive? Money is just a means. Power is just a toy. Aliveness is the goal. So do not fear losing your ambition. You will lose your neurosis and you will gain creativity. And if you want to express that creativity now, join our community. Become a member. It is a creative act to support something you believe in. It is an act of aliveness. Click join and be part of this energy field. We are coming closer to the essence now. You have peeled the onion. You have seen the mind's tricks. You have seen the heart's wounds. You have seen the fear of joy. Now what remains? Nothing and everything. You remain not the you think you are, not the name on your passport, but the you that was there before you were born, and the you that will be there after you die. The witness, the sky. Return to the sky. Whenever you feel a cloud of suffering appearing, remember, I am the sky. Don't push the cloud. Don't analyze the cloud. Just be the sky. The cloud will pass. It has to pass. It is the nature of clouds to move. It is the nature of the sky to stay. Be the sky. And from that vastness, a laughter will arise. A laughter at the absurdity of it all. I was worried about that. I was crying over that. You will laugh at your own stupidity. And that laughter is sacred. That laughter is the sound of chains breaking. As we move toward the final part of this sharing, I want to plant a seed in you. The seed of yes. The mind says no. No to pain, no to death, no to insecurity. The spirit says yes. Yes to life, yes to death, yes to the storm, yes to the silence. Say yes. Let yes be your mantra. Whatever life brings, say yes and see what happens. The door will open, the wall will crumble, because no closes the door. No creates the wall. Yes is the key. Say yes to your suffering and it transforms. Say yes to your joy and it deepens. Say yes to me, say yes to this moment. And if you are feeling a big yes rising in your belly, let it out. Type yes in the comments. Let the algorithm know that you are alive. Let the world know that you are ready. In the next and final part, I will give you the ultimate secret, the one thing that if you understand it makes all other techniques unnecessary, the master key. We have walked a long way together. We have climbed the mountain. Now we are near the peak. Don't stop now. The view from the top is worth everything. And what is this view from the top? It is not a view of angels playing harps. It is not a view of a golden city. It is a view of yourself. It is the realization that the climber, the mountain, and the path were all one. There was nowhere to go. You were running on a treadmill. You were sweating. You were struggling, but you were in the same place. The ultimate secret is this: you are already home. You are struggling to get to a place where you already are. It is like a fish in the ocean asking, "Where is the ocean? I am thirsty for the ocean." And the other fish says, "You are in it. You are made of it." But the first fish says, "Don't give me philosophy. I want the ocean. I need a map to the ocean." You are that fish. I am the other fish laughing at you. You are made of joy. You are woven from the thread of bliss. It is your very substance. You cannot lose it, even if you try. You can only ignore it. You can only close your eyes and pretend it is not there. The secret is to open your eyes. And what opens the eyes? Not effort. Effort closes the eyes. Have you noticed? When you try hard to sleep, you cannot sleep. When you try hard to remember a name, you forget it. Relaxation opens the eyes. Surrender opens the eyes. Laughter opens the eyes. So the secret is to stop trying to be spiritual, stop trying to be good, stop trying to be happy. Just be, sit, breathe, watch the grass grow, sitting silently, doing nothing. The spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This is the greatest haiku ever written. It does not say, pull the grass. It does not say, yell at the grass to grow faster. It grows by itself. Your joy grows by itself. Your enlightenment grows by itself. You just have to get out of the way. You are blocking the sun. Your ego is the shadow. Step aside. And how do you step aside? By celebrating. This is my message to you. Transform your life from a struggle into a celebration. Religion has been too serious for too long. It has been about fasting, about punishment, about guilt, about kneeling, about apologizing to God. I am sorry I was born. What kind of religion is this? It is pathology. I teach you a religion of dance, a religion of song, a religion of feasting. When you celebrate, the ego disappears. Have you ever seen a dancer who is totally lost in the dance? Is the dancer there? No, only the dance remains. The ego cannot dance. The ego is stiff. The ego is self-conscious. How do I look? Is my leg straight? But when the dance takes over, the I vanishes, and in that vanishing, God appears. So, if you cannot meditate, dance. If you cannot sit still, sing. Make your life a festival. Wake up in the morning and say, "This is a day for celebration, but I have to go to work. I have to pay bills." Celebrate paying the bills. It means you have electricity. Celebrate going to work. It means you have energy to move. change the quality of your action. If you clean the floor with anger, it is work. If you clean the floor with love, it is worship. The action is the same. The floor does not know the difference, but you know the difference. Your heart knows. Turn every mundane act into a sacred ritual. Drinking tea, walking the dog, washing the dishes. Do it with such totality, with such love, that it becomes a prayer. Then you don't need to go to the church. Your kitchen is the church. Your office is the temple. This is the only way to live in the modern world. You cannot escape to the Himalayas, and you shouldn't. The Himalayas are cold, and there is no Wi-Fi. You have to find your Himalayas here, in the traffic, in the market. This brings me to the concept of Zorba the Buddha. This is my vision for the new man. Zorba is the Greek fellow who loves to eat, drink, dance, love. He is earthy, he is rooted, he enjoys the senses, he is not afraid of the body. Buddha is the one who sits under the Bodhi tree. He is sky, he is silent, he is aware, he enjoys the spirit. Until now, humanity has been divided. The materialists chose Zorba and rejected Buddha. They have money, they have cars, they have wine, but they have no soul. They are empty inside. They are rich beggars. The spiritualists chose Buddha and rejected Zorba. They have silence, they have peace, but they are poor, they are weak, they are against the body, they are holy skeletons. Both are incomplete, both are half men. I want you to be whole. I want you to be Zorba and Buddha. Enjoy the wine and enjoy the silence. Enjoy the marketplace and enjoy the meditation. Why choose? Existence has given you both. Have roots in the earth and wings in the sky. Be a materialist spiritualist. Use money, but don't be used by it. Use technology, but don't become a machine. Love sex, but transform it into love. This is the hardest path, because it requires balance. It is easy to renounce the world and run away. It is easy to get lost in the world and forget yourself. To be in the world, but not of it. That is the challenge. That is the razor's edge, but that is where the juice is. When you bring your meditation into your lovemaking, it becomes tantra. When you bring your silence into your business, it becomes creativity. You become a richness, a multidimensional being. So do not deny any part of yourself. Do not say, this is bad, this is lower. Nothing is lower. The roots are as important as the flower. Without the mud, there is no lotus. Honor your mud. Honor your body. It is the temple of the divine. If you are following this vision, if you want to be a Zorba the Buddha, show it. Join this channel. The join button is a commitment to this wholeness. It is a way to say, I am ready to integrate both worlds, and if you have the means, use the super thanks. Let your material wealth support spiritual growth. That is the perfect example of Zorba serving Buddha. And now, a warning about the goal. The mind is always goal-oriented. Even with enlightenment, you make it a goal. I must become enlightened by next Tuesday. And the moment you make it a goal, you miss it. Because a goal is in the future, and reality is here. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is a way of traveling. It is traveling without luggage. It is traveling without a map. It is traveling with a song. If you are happy while you are walking, you have arrived. The destination is in the journey. The means are the end. If you are miserable today so you can be happy tomorrow, you are a fool. Because tomorrow will be born out of today. If today is miserable, tomorrow will be the child of misery. It will be even more miserable. If you want a happy tomorrow, be happy today. The seed determines the tree. Sow seeds of joy right now. Smile. Even if it feels fake at first, the muscles of the face trigger the chemistry of the brain. It is a feedback loop. Act happy, and you will become happy. Fake it until you make it. No, fake it until you realize you are not faking it. Because happiness is your nature. You are just out of practice. You are rehearsing the role of the happy man, which is your true role. You have been playing the role of the sad victim for so long that you think it is real. It is an Oscar-winning performance, I admit, but the movie is over. Come off the stage, wash off the makeup, see who you are behind the mask. You are the one who watches. You are the one who knows. You are the one who is Sakyananda. Truth, consciousness, bliss. This is your Trinity. And this Trinity is not in the sky. It is in your breath. Feel your breath right now. In, out. Is there any suffering in the breath? No. Is there any past in the breath? No. You cannot breathe yesterday's breath. You cannot breathe tomorrow's breath. You can only breathe this breath. The breath is your anchor to the present. Whenever the mind takes you away to the fear of the future, to the regret of the past, come back to the breath. It is always there waiting for you. It is your best friend. It has been with you since the moment you were born, and it will be with you until the moment you leave the body. Trust the breath. And as you breathe, remember you are not breathing. Existence is breathing you. You think, I am breathing. No. If you had to remember to breathe, you would have died long ago. You would have forgotten while you were sleeping. Oops, I forgot to breathe. Something else is breathing you. A vast intelligence is keeping you alive. Why? Because it loves you, because it enjoys you, because you are necessary. Without you, this universe would be less. A note would be missing from the symphony. You are not accidental. You are essential. Feel this worthiness. Let it sink into your bones. I am essential to existence. When you feel this, how can you suffer? How can you feel small? You are as big as the universe. Aham Brahmasmi. I am the universe. This is not ego. The ego says, I am special. You are not. This realization says, I am the universe, and so are you. It destroys the hierarchy. It destroys the separation. We are all waves of the same ocean, different shapes, different sizes, but the same water. Why fight with the other wave? You are both water. Relax into the water. And now, as we reach the silence at the end of words, words are just fingers pointing to the moon. Do not bite the finger. Look at the moon. My words are not the truth. They are just a device to stop your mind long enough for the truth to enter. If you have heard me today, really heard me, something in you has already changed. A seed has been dropped. Do not dig it up to check if it is growing. Just water it. Water it with laughter. Water it with silence. Water it with love. And one day, suddenly, you will bloom. 1,000-petaled lotus will open in your heart, and the fragrance will reach the furthest stars. This is your destiny, not suffering, blooming. You are a seed meant to become a flower. Do not die as a seed. That is the only sin. To die as a seed is to miss the opportunity of life. Bloom, explode, share your fragrance. And when you share, you will see that the more you give, the more existence pours into you. You become a channel. If you block the flow, the water becomes stagnant. If you open the gates, the fresh river flows. Be a channel. If this message has opened a gate in you, do not let it close. Keep the energy moving. Like this video, not for the numbers, but as a yes to the message. Comment below, share your realization, share your yes. When you write it down, it becomes physically real. It is a contract with yourself. Share this with a friend who is suffering. Be the light for someone else. And if you want to walk this path with us deeper and closer, click join. Become a member of this caravan. We are going to the other shore. Or leave a super thanks. It is a beautiful way to complete the circle of energy. You received, you give. The circle is complete. Also check the description for the ebooks. They are silent friends you can carry in your pocket. We have arrived at the end of the discourse, but this is not the end. This is the beginning of your real life, the life of joy, the life of awareness, the life of celebration. Go now, the door is open, the sky is waiting, your wings are ready, fly, and remember, you are not the mind, you are not the pain, you are the joy watching it all. Be the watcher and enjoy the show. Okay? Good.